Hello everyone, welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. Naruto had legendary Mew and Eevee in Pokemon Universe movie, outside the borders of the Land of Fire and the Land of Water. There was a small trading town known as the Bridge Between Worlds. Its infamous name was coined by the Uchiha known as Madara, who insisted that this town rested upon the last known lands that the Sage of Six Paths was around before he died due to an incident he claimed he had. However, it was because of Madara's recent defeat at the hands of Hashirama Senju, for the first time in the era of which Konohagakure was first constructed, that no one heeded his words. The Uchiha himself soon believed his words were derived from insanity and began to delude himself into thinking that, and it is quoted, "Little pink mice cannot exist, and if they did, they would never fly with the sound of an infant's giggles following them, nor would they play with bubbles." Words so wrong had never been spoken before, for if Madara even began to believe his own story and investigated, then the tragedy that would occur in only moments to a young prepubescent boy would never happen. Said boy is who we come across now. He is a short boy, just barely reaching the height of 4.5 feet tall, and wore all orange. His hair was the color of the sun and was spiked out all over. Similar to that of the man that was nearly twice his height, this man had an olive green outfit on with mesh leggings and armbands that kept his clothes from getting in his way, and to make his walking with his Geta sandals that much easier. The horned headband around his head had the kanji for oil scribed on in, while the young blonde's was a simple blue cloth with a metal plate that had a spiraling leaf carved on it. At the moment, the two traveling companions weren't getting anywhere fast due to the disagreement they were having. "Come on, Ero Sennin," Naruto whined. "I may be 12, but I can handle an A-rank jutsu. I mastered the Rasengan, didn't I?" "Huh? You call that cheat with clones mastery?" The Toad Sage Jiraiya shot back with a guffaw. "Please, the Undaime and I both did that for months before we even managed to get one hand down. Hell, it took Kakashi a year before he could do it in one hand, and he was a prodigy that the council drooled over." Naruto scowled. "Yeah, but master the Rasengan and get back to me on that new jutsu plea," Jiraiya said firmly before a lecherous grin came over his face. "Now if you'll excuse me, I've got some information to get, and then some research to conduct." Naruto watched as his chosen sensei ran off to another brothel and he pouted again, crossing his arms before scowling and clenching his fists as he stormed towards a wooded area just outside the town that everyone seemed to ignore. Once he was a good 15 feet into the wood, Naruto angrily pulled the scroll that the old sage had left with him out of his back pouch and dropped it to the ground. The blonde held his right hand out and began cycling his chakra through his coils in an effort to get the massive current known as his chakra under control. Holding his left hand over his right, Naruto began focusing the chakra into a condensed ball. Spinning it in two directions, the blonde felt a bead of sweat drop down the right side of his head as he then began the second part of the technique, pumping the power of his chakra into a raw sphere. A grin crossed his face before the sphere started to grow and he yelped when it suddenly burst. Naruto flew back and slammed against the trunk of a tree, crying out on impact as he heard a crack come from within himself. The subtle release of energy spanned across a dimensional rift, awaking a small pink being whose tail was longer than its body. It was no taller than 2 feet and had big blue eyes, much like those of our hero, who was currently cringing in pain, that opened and screamed nothing but mischief. The being zipped up from its hole in the ground and looked around, yawning and stretching its small arms as its mouth opened widely. The creature looked around before looking up at the sky. The creature blinked a few times before tilting its head and squeaking out a single word. "Mew?" Mew flew up, looking around as it did so, before looking around and finding a small sphere, poking it curiously. Mew released a small squeal of surprise when it was given a small shock. Curious, Mew poked the sphere with a telekinetic-covered tail tip, pleased when it wasn't shocked once again. The small mouse liked being further examined the sphere by circling it and poking it at various places. It was on the last poke that Mew heard the voice of our hero. "Ow. That really hurt. Ow, ow." Concerned for the owner of the mysterious voice, Mew, being the kind Mew that it was, deemed the necessity to investigate of utmost importance, with a mental lock on the energy that laced the voice's signature. The all-powerful entity vanished in a small pink flash before reappearing upside down in front of the orange-clad boy that was reaching for his back with a painful cringe crossing his face. "It feels like it's broken. Goddamn fox. Can't you at least heal me faster?" Naruto whimpered, making Mew float back and examine the boy. Naruto was distracted by his pain when a very quiet sound hit his ears. "Mew." The blonde opened his eyes to see the floating pink mouse, and like most humans of his dimension, stared for a good 5 minutes before shooting to his feet, forgetting about his possibly broken back momentarily, and ran around screaming like a chicken with its head cut off. "Ah! A demon! Demon! Somebody help me! Naruto exclaimed as he ran in a circle. Mew. Knowing the words but ignoring them as the boy's actions were much more entertaining than the hurtful phrases it heard. Giggled at the blonde's reaction of needing a legendary being such as himself. The small pink mouse like being giggled loudly as it rolled in the air as Naruto continued to scream his head off. Forgetting that the scroll he dropped earlier was a silencing privacy scroll that activated as soon as chakra was pulsed through it, which is what happened when he pulled it out and dropped it, until the pain of his broken back re-emerged into the front of his mind, causing him to suddenly stop and drop to the ground, unconscious from the overload of pain, fright, and adrenaline coursing through his system. Mew, curious as to why the funny boy stopped screaming, floated over to the unconscious boy's body. A malicious force leaked out from the body, making Mew pause and squeak in fright, before its eyes glowed blue and a pink sphere grew over the area, engulfing both the small mouse and the unconscious boy. Jiraiya laughed joyously as he was given a lap dance, before going rigid when he felt the absence of a certain chakra signature. A sensor he was not, but he was a Sannin and he had trained his senses with the toads to be as good as the best sensors out there. So when Naruto's chakra signature vanished, needless to say he felt it, reluctantly vanishing out of the brothel, leaving behind a scowling whore without a tip. Jiraiya rushed to the last known location of his apprentice, Godson. He knew the boy's location because he left a clone to follow the boy before dispersing as soon as Naruto dropped the privacy scroll. Looking around, finding no sign of his charge, Jiraiya felt a large amount of dread come over him when suddenly he was engulfed in smoke and found himself at the base of Mount Myoboku, standing stupidly before Gamabunta, Ma and Pa. The elder toads looked worriedly at the old man and he feared even more for his godson when Gamabunta's deep voice echoed around him. Jiraiya Yubaka, how could you have let Naruto sign another contract? What do you mean? He didn't sign another contract. As soon as the words left his mouth, another followed and his eyes widened. No, he whispered, fear in his voice, with the quickness of a concerned guardian. Jiraiya flipped his large scroll latched to his back around and unrolled it, revealing the toad summon contract. Before his eyes, the bloody fingerprint seal used to link a living summoner to a scroll faded and the white-haired man felt tears rush to his eyes. It had only happened once before when the Kyuubi attacked the village, reverse summoning included. Only that time, Gamabunta had delivered the dreaded news to him. No, the sage whispered again as he went limp and tears came down his cheeks, causing his face paint to act up and thicken. The toads all bowed their heads and Gamabunta turned to the mountain, looking at his two small sons that had befriended the blonde apprentice, watching as Gamakichi comforted his younger brother. They knew what happened, they felt it happen. Naruto Uzumaki had died, and no one present knew how or why. A blonde preteen was lying on his back in a soft bed. A light cloth blanket covering his body. The town he was in was known as Pallet Town. And caring for him was the ever-caring Delia Ketchum, and the renowned Professor Oak was going over some charts nearby, trying to determine why Mew, the legendary Pokemon that only a few had glimpsed, Oak included, had deemed this boy important enough to drop off at his home. The small Pokemon even gave an explanation, but it was so fast and high-pitched that Oak wondered if he would ever understand it, or if Mew had simply implanted the strong suggestion of helping the young boy. Hence why Delia Ketchum was there. A mother she was, but her only child was no longer present 24/7, as he had left only a month before. Mothering an injured stranger only 2 years older than her baby wasn't exactly the same, but she never was one to look a gift horse in the mouth. What could be wrong with him, Professor? Delia asked worriedly as she dabbed at the blonde's forehead. He's burning up. Oh, here it is, Oak suddenly exclaimed, looking at a report handed to him by Alakazam he had on his ranch. Thank you, Einstein. Our friend here seems to be suffering from a form of teleportation sickness, quite rare, but cured with enough rest and a few moderate potions made from beetle honey. Luckily for us, I happen to have a jar in my fridge. Einstein, if you wouldn't mind. Kazam, the genius Pokemon muttered as it floated out of the room, its legs crossed and a bored expression locked on its face. Professor Oak sighed and scratched the back of his head. I swear, sometimes that Pokemon just likes to make me feel stupid, the professor of Pokemon mumbled, looking back at his new charge. Professor Oak smiled and set the clipboard down. Don't worry, son, you'll be good as new soon. A moan made the professor and red-headed woman look up at the scrunched-up face of the John Doe lying in the bed of the Oak Ranch. Delia was shocked speechless as the boy's eyes cracked open and revealed two innocent cerulean blue eyes filled with years' worth of loneliness and pain. Professor Oak simply watched with a slack jaw as the boy glanced around through what had to be blurry eyes. Naruto groaned again as he tried to focus on the blurs before him. One was white and another was red, the latter making him think of a long-forgotten image that no one ever remembers, save for a select few. This image was the first sight of his mother's tear-stricken face covering looking down with nothing but love at her newborn son. As he crinkled his brows in an effort to focus on the figures, one spoke. Easy, Easy now, son, a kind old voice said, reminding him of his Gigi before his death. Knowing that Sarutobi Hiruzen was dead made the boy instantly frightened. His heartbeat picked up and he tried to shrink back into the bed as the voice continued. You're okay now. I don't know why you were brought here, but... Am I dead? His first question shocked the two figures, their features slowly clearing up as his eyes adjusted to his surroundings. Dead. No. Heavens no. The old man chuckled out, when his eyes had cleared enough. Naruto once again felt fear come over his body as the man and woman before him were completely unrecognizable as was the room he was in. Even more frightening was that he didn't feel as energized as he should have, and not to mention his back still hurt like a mother asterisk. You're in Pallid Town, the man said with a kind smile as he put his hand on his chest. My name is Professor Oak. This is Delia Ketchum. Might I ask your name? N. Naruto Uzumaki, he replied quietly. What land is Pallid Town in? What do you mean? Professor, Oak replied as he and Delia owlishly stared at the confused boy. I was near the land of fire before I was. No, it was just a dream. I must have hit my head harder than I thought, Naruto muttered, wincing as he tried to lift his arm. Ow. Land of fire? Delia repeated with confusion. Dream. Professor Oak parroted questionably. Yeah, the land of fire, where Konohagakure no Sato is. Naruto answered Delia, who continued to stare at him. Okay. What country am I in, then? Oh, Kanto, of course, Delia answered with a smile. Naruto stared blankly at her. No, seriously, what country am I in? He asked after a moment of silence. The two adults exchanged a glance before looking back at the blonde. Naruto, was it? Professor Oak asked, getting a slow nod from the inquired teen. You said you're from a village hidden in the leaves? Yeah, I am gonna grow up and run it as Hokage, Naruto confirmed with a foxy grin before wincing when pain racked his body. But I can't be Hokage if I am all banged up. Hokage? The two adults repeated with curiosity. Naruto looked at them like they grew two heads. Well, yeah, the strongest ninja in all of the village, duh, Naruto answered. I am gonna be the strongest Hokage ever. Naruto, Professor, Oak inquired. Tell me about the dream you had before you woke up here. Huh? Oh. Naruto snapped his fingers as he remembered. Yeah, I was training like Ero Sennin said to so I could learn another badass jutsu. Ow. The blonde found himself wincing as he cradled his head, looking confusedly at the red-headed woman wielding a pan from who knows where in the post-striking position. Delia had a twitch in her left eye and she growled, watch your mouth, young man. What do you mean watch my mouth? Naruto asked, tilting his head as he rubbed it. Lady, you got a hell of a swinging arm, ow? Why? Language. Oh, Naruto said in realization before meekly apologizing. Sorry? That's better, Delia said with a smile and a nod. Naruto eyed the red-headed woman cautiously before looking back at an understanding Professor Oak. Anyway, I was training myself in using a Rasengan one-handedly to learn a awesome jutsu, Naruto continued, correcting himself when a flash of metal crossed the corners of his vision. I sort of lost control over the dang thing before it exploded in my face and sent me flying into a tree. You blew yourself up and flew into a tree? Delia questioned, her motherly instincts screaming internally to punish the boy for doing something so stupid while she kept her composure. Well, yeah, but it wasn't like I've never done it before, Naruto replied, unknowingly digging himself further into a ditch of mothering that no man wants, while Professor Oak listened intently as the blonde continued. But that time I think I broke my back or something because it really hurt after I hit the tree, and then I think I passed out and the dream began. Professor Oak leaned forward and pulled a notepad out, taking notes as he listened. The blonde spoke with a bit of fear lacing his words. Then, a demon appeared. Demon? Both adults repeated in disbelief. Yeah, Naruto said with excessive bobbing of his head. I mean, this thing was obviously a demon, flowing around and being all pink-like. Okay, maybe it was a fairy, but that's not the point. Oh, now I understand, Professor Oak interrupted with a chuckle, making the blonde scowl. Oi, don't laugh at me, ya old coot. This thing was downright freaky. Okay. Why'd y'all hit me that time? Naruto asked Delia as he nursed a growing bruise on his head. Respect your elders. Naruto merely frowned while Oak released an amused chuckle before he spoke again. What you saw, my boy, was Mew. Mew? That's right, Oak said with a nod. Mew, Einstein, would you come in here for a moment please? If Naruto was scared before, his curiosity now overshadowed it as awe slowly overcame his features. Flowing into the room with a yellow jar orbiting its head was a dark yellow human-like thing was the only way he could describe it, with brown shoulders, chest, And what had to be its crotch, on its animal-like snout, were two large bundles of whiskers that seemed to mimic a ridiculously large mustache. What is that? Naruto exclaimed as fear once again took over and he pointed at the thing. Professor Oak laughed and patted the boy on his knee. Come, it's not polite to point. Naruto Uzumaki. Please meet Einstein. Einstein. This is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto. Einstein is what we call a Pokemon, from what you've told me. I believe you come from a parallel universe perhaps, or a brother dimension. Kazam! Holy hell, it can talk. Ow! Watch your mouth. Professor Oak laughed as Naruto held his head, tears brimming at the corners of his eyes as he whimpered in pain. Naruto, the professor got the blonde's attention once again. I believe the Pokemon you encountered, Mew, has brought you here from your world to ours. What? Well, make it send me back. Naruto shouted, his fists clenched and anger crossing his face. It's not that simple, Oak replied with a shake of his head, making Naruto distraught. Mew does whatever it wants, whenever it wants, for whatever it wants. I think it was worried about you passing out and brought you to me. In this world, I am rather famous to both humans and Pokemon. Pokemon, what are they anyway? You keep throwing that world around. What's it mean? The blonde asked, curious. Professor Oak smiled and put his hands behind his back. Well, in this world, Pokemon are the same as whatever animals you have in your world, I guess, Oak answered. But we use them as companions, friends, and even Einstein if you would. Kazam! The Alakazam replied with a nod, turning on the television with its mind. Naruto looked to see two people standing across from each other. One had a dinosaur and the other had a large bird standing next to him. The blonde genin was awed by what he was seeing and was snapped from it as the professor continued. Some, like Delia's son Ash, go out into the world as trainers to capture and train Pokemon to fight in tournaments in an effort to be known as a master. Well, I can imagine being a Pokemon master would be the same as being Hokage, Oak summed up. Naruto looked from the old man back to the television, not entirely sure of what he was hearing when Oak continued. Some trainers even manage to come into contact with legendary Pokemon like Mew. In fact, I believe Ash has told me about a recent encounter with a legendary, but Dexter wouldn't analyze it. He'll have to contact Elm about that one. Whoa, wait, Naruto said, looking at the professor and eyeing Delia as she began stirring the jar the Alakazam brought in. Before he became serious, if I become a Pokemon trainer, I can find Mew? It's possible, but highly unlikely, Oak said before smiling as he realized what the boy was asking, by the look of determination on his face, and the one of disapproval on Delia's. Oak knew that everyone in the room knew what his goal was. Well then, Naruto said with a determined smirk, if what you're saying is true, then I've got to become a trainer to find Mew so I can go home. Oak smiled at the boy before he said, yes, well, we can't have you running around in the world when you're recovering, Delia, if you wouldn't mind. Oh, it'd be my pleasure, Professor, Delia replied in a sickly sweet tone before she shoved a spoonful of mixed beetle honey into the shocked blonde's mouth. Naruto swallowed the medicine and blanched at the bittersweet taste before his eyelids began feeling very heavy. Well, talk more after you get better, Naruto, Professor Oak said with a smile as the boy passed out. For now, focus on getting better. Delia put the spoon back in the jar and looked at Oak worriedly. Professor, is it true? It's not impossible if that's what you're asking, Oak replied with a sigh as they left the room, leaving the Alakazam to sort through the boy's mind and get more answers as he slept. Improbable, maybe, but not impossible. But imagine this. He's from another world, another dimension. Did you see how he reacted to Einstein? The yearning for knowledge is in the boy. I just know it. Maybe he'll be able to do what I can no longer do. Naruto had revealed his past on the second day of his bedridden stay. Delia comforted him while Oak would do the same as well as try to understand the world he came from. The woman nearly killed him with her pan when he tried to keep from explaining the Kyuubi, eventually doing so, and showing them the seal. Oak was fascinated and took a moment to sketch the seal during the boy's resting period, studying it in another attempt to understand the world Naruto originated from. A week passed, and Naruto was finally out of his bed confinement. It would take him a month, however, to get started on his journey. First, he was going to be taught everything a trainer would need to know, how the health of a Pokemon needs to be upheld or it may cease to cooperate with the trainer, and the same could be said for the respect a trainer needs to successfully raise a Pokemon, not to mention items found in Pokemarts, Pokecenters, and the importance of gym badges. Naruto absorbed this, and he was especially fascinated by the workings of a Pokeball as well as the purpose of a Pokédex, now ecstatic to begin his new journey in an effort to get home. The blonde couldn't wait to get a Pokemon, secretly excited to get a new friend, when he learned that the professor was out of the normal 3 starters, Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur. For the rest of the season, though, his spirits sank. Until the professor came forward with a single Pokeball that had a blue dot on it. Naruto looked at the man before he looked back at the red and white mechanical orb that contained a Pokemon. I think this one would be perfect for you, Oak said with a smile as Delia watched. The woman had taken time from her days to help the blonde learn good ways to care for Pokemon as he helped around the ranch. Over the course of the month, she had filled the slot for a mother figure that he had been lacking for most of his life. What is it? Another Pikachu. Because I ain't in the mood to be like Ash. No offense, Mom, Naruto said. Using the label she insisted he call her if he would be seeing her as such. The woman giggled and he knew that she didn't mind, taking a breath after trying to determine whether Oak would make him go through what Ash had on his first day as a trainer. Naruto turned to the open field and pushed down on the button of the Pokeball before tossing it into the air. A red beam shot out after the ball popped open and a brown-furred Pokemon appeared before the three humans. Naruto caught the ball before looking down at the Pokemon sitting expectantly before him, a smile on its cat-like face. The blonde's smile shot over his face and he crouched down to pet the Pokemon. Wow, an Eevee. I get to start with an Eevee? Naruto asked the professor with a smile as the brown and white-furred Pokemon bounced into his arms, licking his chin and making him laugh. Oak chuckled and nodded, making Naruto smile even more before setting the brown-furred Pokemon down and examining it. The coat of his partner was shiny and clean, a healthy snow-white mane surrounding the neck of his partner while the cat, fox-like body was a relatively smaller size than the normal 1.5-foot long, foot-tall average most came in. Eevee. The Eevee purred out as Naruto began stroking him carefully and with affection. I think this Eevee's already accepted you, Naruto, Delia giggled as she scratched the underside of the Pokemon's chin. He's so sweet, what will you call him? Naruto grinned before holding the happy Eevee out at arm's length, the Pokemon's tail wagging from side to side as it smiled back at him. I'll call him Kanto. I don't know why, but he reminds me of home, and yet, hell remind me of Pallid Town. VVV. The newly named Kanto said in approval as Naruto brought him back into his arms in an affectionate hug. Professor Oak and Delia watched with smiles as Naruto set the small Pokemon down and began playing with him, their bond growing to proportions that no one can expect. Not even Naruto himself. Naruto pulled at the neckline of the black shirt that fit tightly around his torso, as his clothes were, in Delia's words, a crime against life itself. Mrs. Ketchum had taken some of her son's clothes from his room and given them to the blonde. He had to look as inconspicuous as possible, according to the professor, and keep a low profile, hence, the new clothes. Naruto's new attire consisted of loose dark blue cargo jeans that would hold his ninja supplies. We'll get back to how he got to keep those in a moment. A tight black shirt that was too big for Ash, but fit snugly on Naruto due to his intense ninja training and his fit build. And his old jacket that was now missing about 75% of the sleeves. Naruto insisted on keeping the atrocity, but had to sacrifice the long sleeves in an effort to placate Delia's concerns over his comfort in the all-around nice weather. Save for a few storms here and there, that Kanto was known for. Now he wore the jacket unzipped, which allowed his Shodai necklace to be seen over his shirt, and had tied his headband around his left arm, just under his clan patch. Now, back to his ninja supplies. When Oak and Delia discovered Naruto's armory, there was his pouch and kunai holster. They confiscated it from his unconscious form and locked it away in a safe. It took hours after hours for Naruto to get his weapons back, most of which were due to failed Shadow clone rescue missions, while the original continued his daily lessons and schoolings. Of course, when Oak and Delia discovered his double-team ability, the former went giddy in excitement that only other scientists could understand, while the latter fainted, after a rather lengthy explanation that involved a lot of sheepish smiles, back of the head scratching, and 2 sets of foxy pleading eyes. Another reason Naruto loved Kanto, Naruto was reunited with his tools. At the moment, our kind blonde was looking in the mirror at himself, hardly recognizing his face without his headband around his forehead, while Kanto made himself comfortable in a position that only his friend Kiba's dog, Akamaru, understood. The small Eevee was perched comfortably on the blonde's head and also taking in his trainer's new appearance. Well, the blonde said, getting Kanto's attention, I guess this is how it's going to be until we find Mew, Kanto. Yeah, that's what I expected you to say. Naruto sighed out before grinning foxily. We're not gonna get anything done by standing around sulking, are we? Kanto confirmed with a nod as his tail began to wag. Naruto's grin remained on his face as he walked out of the room and into the living area, stopping only to pull his sandals back on. Waiting by the door were his recent acquaintances and parental figures, Oak and Delia. The professor was dressed in his usual khakis, brown dockers and red shirt under a doctor's jacket. He had a smile on his face, reminding Naruto once again of his deceased grandfather, and his hands were interlocked behind his back. The eyes of wisdom, pride, and kindness stayed on the blonde while occasionally glancing at his companion, similar to Ash and Pikachu. Naruto decided to let Kanto remain out of the Pokeball, but the difference is Ash had no choice while Naruto asked the Eevee to choose. Smiling a bit wider, Oak wondered if the two would meet up, before dashing the thought as Ash had a 2-month-long head start on the rookie before him. There was no way Naruto could manage to catch up to the now veteran Pokemon trainer. Delia smiled sadly as another boy left her home for who knows how long. She was dressed in a pink blouse and blue skirt while her hair was pulled back in a French braid. In her hands before her was a black satchel filled with a map, a couple of dollars, and a duplicate pair of clothes. The blonde may not have been around for long, but he sure did his best at slipping into a part of her heart she always reserved for Ash. Naruto smiled up at the both of them, Kanto's tail wagging even faster when they were standing across from them. Taking the satchel from Mrs. Ketchum and pulling it on, Naruto then hugged the woman. "Thanks for everything, Mom. I'll be sure to get Ash to call more often." Delia laughed at her older son and hugged him back, giggling when Kanto licked her cheek. "You better stay safe and in contact." "Ah, I will," Naruto said, leaning back out of the hug and locking his hands behind his head as he grinned at her. "Just think of it like I am. My mission is to find Mew, but to report in every few days to my superior." "Smart lad," Oak chuckled as Delia giggled sadly, causing the blonde to look at him. Holding his right hand out, Oak held a small red device no bigger than the wallet that replaced Gama-chan, who now was perched next to Ash's first stuffed toy in the Ketchum household. Looking at it before taking it, Naruto waited patiently for Oak to continue. "That's a Pokédex, or Dexter to some, designed by yours truly. It should give you any information on the Pokemon you will encounter." After examining the technical device, Naruto then noticed something. It's got blank spaces. "Ah, yes, well, Oak embarrassedly stuttered as he scratched his head, "as I am getting on in my years." "'Cause you're old," Naruto chimed in with a smirk, getting a light smack from Delia for his childish antics. "Well, yes," the professor said with a nod, "because I am old as you say. I can't go out and study Pokemon as often as I used to, so I ask of you to collect information in my place as you look for Mew, if it's not too much trouble." Naruto grinned, putting the Pokédex in his pocket. "I'll get it done, Professor Oak. Y'all just had to ask, is all. I'll find Mew and fill the blanks along the way, and that's a promise." The two adults smiled as the young preteen looked up at his partner. "Ready, Kanto?" "EVV," Kanto confirmed with a nod once again. "All right then," Naruto said, turning around and dashing away with chakra-enhanced speed. The two Pallet Town residents were stunned as the boy was a mile away from the town's gates before 5 minutes had passed. "That boy is something special," Oak said with awe. Delia simply nodded, before walking away to perform some household duties while the professor silently made his leave and went back to work. Both wondered what sort of world Naruto came from in order to make him the way he was. Konohagakure no Sato, aka the village hidden in the leaves, was normally a quiet place with the occasional small rumble due to ninja training. The stores always had smiles on their faces and the people were all nice to one another. In a world where violence was always guaranteed, it was as close to peaceful as you could get. "What did you say?" A woman's voice suddenly roared throughout the village, causing every being within to stop what they were doing as killing intent leaked out from around the heart of the village. Even spies stationed a mile out of reach from other villages paused. A few wet themselves in fear. As stated before, the Leaf Village was as close to peaceful as you could get. That was before Jiraiya returned to report his apprentice's death. The owner of the voice that caused the world to stop was a young woman in her early 30s. With a chest that would make every man look, her blonde hair was pulled back into twin tails that normally rested behind her. She wore a light blue-gray medical GI underneath a green jacket with the kanji for gamble in a red circle on the back, while her legs were normally covered by blue shinobi slacks. These details are known only because she had just thrown her desk at the offending speaker, who barely escaped via Kawamari, and she stood with the aura of a woman that would be committing murder in a few moments. This was Tsunade Senju, the Godem Hokage and one of the most feared women throughout the elemental nations. She's the best medical ninja in the world and one of the 3 Sannin, teammate to Jiraiya and the traitorous Orochimaru. Her greatest skill would be her unnatural strength that could be measured only by a few, and that's when she was docile. Now, however, she was currently pissed off. "Would you please repeat that, Jiraiya?" Tsunade snarled to her terrified teammate while her own apprentice and the remaining Squad 7 stood out of her way, shaking from fear at both what their leader was capable of and the need to repress their feelings over what Jiraiya reported. "If I do, will you promise not to kill me?" Jiraiya asked, trying to phase through the wall he was backed up against as the irate woman stormed towards him. At the signature cracking of her knuckles, the white-haired sage whimpered, "Guess not." "How is he dead?" Tsunade asked through a growl as she approached her teammate. Not giving the pervert a chance to defend himself, Tsunade slammed her fist into his gut, sending him through the wall of the room and out the wall of the building, still storming as she walked. Her left head cocked back and punched just as Jiraiya shunshined back into the building, hitting her teammate square in the jaw. The Godem crouched down and jumped up after the Sorin Sannin, grabbing his shirt and pulling a fist back. Tsunade, I am sorry. Jiraiya tried to apologize quickly so he could save himself. He was only 12. Tsunade roared, punching her teammate in the face and sending him to the ground, making an impact that caused dust to shoot up. The blonde cage fell and drove her feet into the spot the winded Jiraiya had previously occupied. The old man bit his thumb and did the necessary hand seals before summoning Ma and Pa. Su Chan's trying to kill me. I need, he started before Ma huffed and dismissed herself. Looking at Pa, the Sannin asked with a shriek of fear, what the hell was that? That, Jiraiya-chan, Pa said with a sigh, was the beginning of a long, long road of trouble for Ya. Me? What did I do? Jiraiya asked, before the older toad could reply. A telephone pole went soaring past his head, missing his head and shoulder by mere centimeters. Both males looked back at the irate Tsunade. I am so dead, that'd be the first time I'd Avenue Ta agree with Ya off the bat, Jiraiya-chan. Naruto, who was blissfully unaware of the chaos his sudden vanishing caused, sped down the trails as his Eevee rested on his head. He was in a hurry to get to Viridian, the nearest town with a gym, and the most probable location that may have spotted Ash. However, before he made it to the resting home outside of the Viridian limits, something flew into his side. Ah! Naruto cried out as he skid back, holding his still bruised ribs from the failed one-handed Rasengan attempt that were just irritated. Whatever Mew did, surely messed up his healing capabilities. The blonde looked up as Kanto cried out as he fell. V. Kanto! Naruto exclaimed, catching the formerly airborne Eevee in his arms. The small brown fox looked up with a smile, earning a foxy grin in return. The two of them looked to see the source of their derailment. A small bird chirped as it walked in circles in a daze. It was brown and white, the light pink beak opening as the chirps came out. Gi. Huh, wonder what that is, Naruto muttered, letting Kanto drop from his arms as he pulled his Pokédex out. The device beeped and an image of the bird popped up. Pidgey, the small bird Pokemon. Pidgey are fairly common Pokemon and are known to fly around in large numbers. Most Pidgey are proficient in tackle and sand attack, using the latter to blind their target and do one of the following. If prey, attack and devour. If foe that is weaker, attack and defeat. If foe that is stronger, attack and flee. Little guy looks a bit out of it, Naruto mused as he put Dexter away. The blonde looked down at the calm Eevee sitting next to his leg and smiled. Let's go help it out, V. Kanto agreed. The two walked over to the dazed bird, Naruto crouching and stopping the bird stumbling by carefully cupping its wings to the Pidgey's sides. At being touched, Pidgey stiffened before trying to fly away, making Naruto jump in surprise. Still holding the bird, Naruto cried out, "Whoa, settle down. I just want to help you out, relax." The bird continued to jump around, chirping angrily at the offending human, before Kanto had had enough. Despite being a normally calm Eevee, Kanto was very impatient and didn't like seeing this Pokemon bitch slap the kindness that his trainer was showing away by attempting to help Rabiv and try to capture it. V. The small Pokemon cried out before chomping down on the tail of the small bird, making the bird go stiff in Naruto's hands. Kanto! Naruto exclaimed in shock before flicking his nose. Don't do that, he's just scared. V. Kanto growled at the bird when he released Pidgey's tail. The Pidgey blinked, still stiff in Naruto's hands, before it chirped back. Gi. V. Kanto nodded, answering a question that went unknown to Naruto for quite a while. The blonde looked between the two Pokemon before Kanto went to his hand and lightly nipped it. Loosening his grip, Naruto allowed for the Pidgey to slip out of his hands. The small bird hopped back and looked at the two, its head tilted to the right. Gi? It chirped questionably. Kanto hopped to the left of the crouched trainer in a ready stance, before looking at his bewildered friend. Kanto. What, does this Pidgey want to fight? Naruto asked, turning to face them, watching as the Pidgey slipped back into a bird-like ready stance as well, understanding the situation, but not the cause. Naruto grinned and pushed himself to his feet at the ready. Alright then, if fight's what you want, then it's a fight you'll get. Gi. Pidgey cried back before flapping its wings and sending sand into the air. Kanto, push through the sand and give that bird a headbutt, Naruto instructed, making the Pokemon nod before rushing towards its chosen foe. The Eevee built up momentum and ducked his head down, the eyes squinting in preparation for the throbbing headache that would come. Unfortunately for Kanto, the Pidgey had other ideas, as it jumped up and flapped its tiny wings, evading the attack and causing Kanto to slam headfirst into a rock. Kanto! Naruto exclaimed with concern. The Eevee stumbled backwards in a daze while the Pidgey chirped in victory before flying backwards and up. V. Kanto moaned out in pain. The brown Pokemon shook his head and looked around before Naruto called out, Kanto, it's above you. Jump back and evade. As instructed, Kanto leapt backwards before the Pidgey could collide with him, growling lowly. The Eevee waited patiently for a second before charging the Pidgey. The small bird was taken by surprise by the sudden brown body slamming into its own, causing both of the Pokemon to roll towards the blonde trainer. "That a boy, Kanto!" Tackle the Pidgey to the ground. Naruto cheered when the two Pokemon collided on Kanto's split-second attack. "Now get up and headbutt him again." As his trainer instructed, Kanto got back to his feet with a bit of a pant in his breaths. As the Pidgey slowly stood, the Eevee braced itself before dashing forward and slamming his head into the Pidgey's beak. The small bird was caught completely off guard and consequently went flying through the air, without a single flap of its wings, before being caught by the trainer it had run into only moments ago. "Not bad," Naruto complimented the bird as he pulled an empty Pokeball out, "but yaw can't beat the best. Rest now. I'll get yaw in tip-top shape after I get into Viridian, okay?" "Gi. The bird chirped back before a red color enveloped its body. Naruto waited patiently as the red and white ball in his hand hummed for several seconds before it dinged, signaling the successful capture of the Pidgey. "Right on," Naruto said with a grin as he holstered the ball on his belt. The blonde then went to his exhausted Eevee and picked the small Pokemon up. With a smile on his face, Naruto cradled the Pokemon and spoke softly. "Ya did great, Kanto. Rest now. I'll get you and the Pidgey to a Pokecenter ASAP." Vey, panted Kanto in reply before he slipped into a calm sleep. Naruto grinned before he resumed his run towards the city. Thankfully, the rest of the run could be called a short jog, and there wasn't another Pidgey incident thanks to the careful way Naruto ran. Naruto walked around Viridian looking for a Pokecenter when a siren went off behind him, stopping with a groan. Naruto turned to see a blue-haired woman dressed in a police uniform get off of a motorcycle after it stopped right in front of him, irritated by the noise. Kanto opened one eye and lowly growled at the woman, upset she ruined his rest. "Hey, where are you going with that Eevee?" the woman asked, her arms crossed over her chest. "I've got a report of a scumbag stealing an Eevee and so far that Eevee matches the description." Naruto groaned and pulled his Pokédex out, flipping the ownership data page out and showed it to her. "Listen, officer, I am just trying to get my Eevee, Kanto, to a Pokemon Center. He just wore himself out fighting a Pidgey for the first time." Well, everything seems legit here," the officer said as she handed the Pokédex back to the young trainer. "As to where the center is, go down the street past that market, take a right, and it's the first building on your left." "Thanks, officer." Naruto trailed off before being given a smile. "Jenny," the now named Jenny said before walking back to her bike. "Now clear the road. You're blocking an officer's path." "Yes, ma'am." Naruto shot back with a grin of thanks before walking to the left and following Officer Jenny's directions. The blonde sighed in relief as he walked into the Pokemon Center, when suddenly a brown-haired boy rushed at him. "You," the brunette said. Naruto slid to the right, avoiding the boy's attempt at tackling him. Annoyed, Naruto put his foot on the backside of the purple shirt wearing brunette and kicked forward, making the downed boy stumble before rounding with a growl. "Give me back my Eevee." "Your Eevee?" Naruto asked with a tick on his head. "Kanto's been with me since I left Pallet Town. Professor Oak gave him to me so I could find Mew." "Wait, Pallet Town? Oak?" the boy said, blinking before smirking. "So, Gramps thinks I am that awesome that he gave another rookie an Eevee, too." "Gramps?" Naruto parroted with a confused look on his face. Before the boy could continue, 6 girls ran in, each holding an Eevee in their arms. Gary, I found your Eevee." The girls each exclaimed with a smile on their face. Gary looked at each Eevee carefully, the first 3 flinching under his gaze, the next 2 growling angrily at him, while the last wagged its tail. Gary turned his gaze back to the 2 growling at him, staring both of them in the eye for a good several seconds before one backed down. Smirking triumphantly, Gary pulled his Pokeball out and returned the Eevee that held its gaze with him to its contents. Naruto, having witnessed all of this, blinked a few times before groaning, "Oh god, it's the Sasuke of Kanto." The 5 girls with the incorrect Eevee were then turned around by several angry trainers, and even an irked little girl. Before the Eevees were returned to their rightful owners, the ninja watching shook his head, turning around and muttering about how stupid he was to have been crushing on a fangirl. Just before he could greet the nurse behind the counter, Gary called out, "Hey loser, what's your name anyway?" On one hand, Naruto mused for a moment. I could introduce myself and blab the truth, but on the other, I can ignore him and get Kanto better, like it's that big of a choice. "Hello, Nurse Joy." Naruto greeted the pink-haired woman wearing nurse attire that was pink under a white apron as he laid Kanto onto the counter. "I need help. My Eevee's exhausted and I need him and my new Pidgey to be healed." "Oh, certainly, I just need your Pokédex to register you into the National Trainers League," the nurse replied with a smile as the blonde did so. "Thank you. Your Pokemon will be returned momentarily." "No rush," Naruto replied with a grin before turning to face a fuming Gary, his 6 cheerleaders staring at the strange blonde. Naruto blinked confusedly before tilting his head. "What's your problem?" "My problem? I don't have a problem. You're nobody. Why would I care if you don't know me? Gary asked with a scowl. Naruto blinked again before cupping his chin. Yeah, no, I think I have seen you somewhere before, he mused, making the boy clench his teeth before the blonde's fingers snapped. Oh, you're Old Man Oak's grandson, right? Jerry? Barry, was it Larry? It's Gary. The fuming trainer exclaimed. Gary Oak, next Pokemon champion. Uh-huh. Well, nice to meet ya. Wait, have ya seen Ash Ketchum? Naruto asked, making Gary's face revert to a curious one. Mom's worried about him and the little punk hasn't checked in lately. Ash. Gary pretended to think hard, not noticing that Naruto had called Ash's mother Mom rather than Mrs. Ketchum. Last I saw Ash Ketchum, he was on the S.N., I think. The what? Naruto asked with a head tilt, causing a few female witnesses to squeal quietly as he stared dumbly at the boy opposite of him. Gary smirked. Oh, right, you're just a rookie. You wouldn't be on ass level, which makes you in the red, doesn't it? I don't know what that means. Naruto started slowly as his face fell into a scowl, but I am pretty sure that was an insult. You're lucky that Kanto is in the center or I'd be challenging you right now. Yeah, right. Gary scoffed as he turned to leave. You and your lame Pokemon haven't got anything on my skills. Well, smell y'all later. Loser, I am gonna go find that jerk that tried to take my Eevee. With that, Gary and his entourage made their leave, the girls all cheering his name as he smirked and shut his eyes. Naruto felt a deep dislike for Gary, but not the same way he did about Sasuke. Thinking about Sasuke made the blonde's heart sink once again. Sakura never would have eyes for him, and he never really had eyes for her. She was just a tool to best Sasuke. Naruto had realized during his time in the Oak's spare bed, because as Naruto saw it, if he could nab Sakura, Sasuke's arguably biggest fan, Sanzino Yamanaka, he could beat Sasuke in anything. The blonde remembered the promise he made, and knew that in order to keep his old promise, he had to keep this new one about finding Mew. Why is my life so complicated? Naruto asked with his head in his hands as he sat in the waiting area for Kanto and his yet-to-be-named Pidgey to heal. The blonde stayed put until he fell asleep from exhaustion, dreaming of becoming something other than Hokage, and staying in the world he was now a part of. Naruto woke up the next morning rather comfortable and warm, blinking before he found himself under a blanket on the waiting couch. A small round Pokemon was staring at him before it smiled. Shan-Si. Ya! Naruto cried out as he leapt up and pulled a kunai out defensively. Taking in his surroundings, the blonde relaxed and sheepishly scratched his head. Hey, sorry about that. Wait, what are you? Naruto flipped his Pokédex out and allowed it to quickly scan the Pokemon in front of him. Dexter beeped before it spoke. Shan-Si. The nurse Pokemon, standing usually at a height of 3 feet and 2 inches. The round Shan-Si is usually the height of a young child, but a Shan-Si's weight is that of a young adult. In its pouch is an egg of unknown origin or purpose. Most Shan-Si are seen helping nurse joys around the world in Pokécenters and make for good friends and companions. Naruto blinked before looking at the blanket and back to the Shan-Si with a grin. Did you do this? Shan-Si. The Shan-Si replied with a nod. Naruto smiled and stood with a stretch before turning to face the Pokemon. Thanks Shan-Si, he said as he folded the blanket up and handed it back to the Pokemon. I guess I was a little tired, too. Perfect timing, Joy said as she walked out with a Pokeball in her hands and an energetic Eevee bounding next to her before rushing towards the grinning blonde. Naruto caught Kanto as he leapt up at the blonde, getting a few happy licks from his healed friend on the chin. Joy smiled and continued as she handed the blonde his Pokeball. Your Pokemon are completely healed and I believe that you've got to be ready to be registered for the Indigo League, yes? Right. So the first gym is here in Viridian, right? Naruto asked as he took the Pidgey's Pokeball and holstered it on his belt. Joy shook her head. Sorry, but the Viridian gym leader hasn't been in town for months now. The nearest gym is in Pewter City. I am sorry, but it's the closest at only a few days worth of a trip if you cut through the Viridian woods. Ah, I think it'll be fine, Naruto said with a smile. Thank you though, Nurse Joy. The blonde then made his leave, unaware of the 2 pairs of eyes watching him leave with the Eevee on his head. The 2 eyes belonged to 2 figures wearing black and white outfits, the chest of their shirts being covered by a giant red R. These 2 figures were members of the crime syndicate Team Rocket, a national criminal organization run by the Elsweave boss Rocket, a mysterious man with an infinite amount of money, influence, and manpower. Like most teams within the syndicate, these 2 were both a man and a woman. They were perched on the building opposite of the Poké Center and had high-tech spying equipment locked on the blonde as he happily talked to his equally happy Eevee. Hey, the poor squirt doesn't even know we're following him, the male figure said with a scratchy voice. This will be easier than the first attempt. I still can't believe that stupid girl managed to sneak the Eevee out of our warehouse. It's a shame he's so young. It'll be a heartbreaker when he's older. You'll have to look him up to apologize afterwards, the female said with a flip of her hair before smirking. But for now, let's focus on getting that Eevee. Yeah, the boss will be ecstatic to receive another Eevee from his two top agents in Kanto, the male said with a laugh. From the female's hip, a red line shot out and a small Pokemon chittered quietly, making both of them laugh. Right you are, Rattata, the woman said with a smirk as she recalled the rat-like Pokemon. Let's get us an Eevee, Butch. After you, Cassidy. Hey Kanto, what do ya think of Old Man Oak's grandson? Naruto asked his companion, unaware of the figures plotting to steal his partner, who was resting comfortably on his head once again. If y'all ask me, I think Jerry was too full of himself. He reminds me of this guy the first knew. A total asshole. Geez. And after we find Mew I have to bring the idiot back to our home. Whoa. This is the Viridian Forest? Naruto stopped outside of a small opening into the immense wood that stood before him. The blonde crossed his arms as he thought of how he would know the right way before he got an idea. Shadow clones. I can get them to find the exit and then get through here faster. What's the kid talking about? Butch asked his partner. Cassidy shrugged, but the two stood firm from where they were perched on the branch of a tree, waiting for their target to make his last mistake. Naruto made the signature tiger seal and channeled chakra before calling out the name to the technique. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Kage Bunwa. The two adults repeated before their target was engulfed in smoke. They coughed, quietly to remain hidden, as the smoke cleared before their eyes widened to immense portions. Standing outside the entrance to the forest was no longer just one teen with a single Eevee, but now there was a small army of them. By head count, it was estimated to be about 50 blondes, while one remained in the back, the Eevee on his head staring in awe at the sheer amount of duplicates his trainer created. V? Cried the shocked Kanto as the original scratched the back of his head. Whoops, overdid it a little. Naruto chuckled out before clapping his hands together. Alright men, your mission is to find the fastest route through the woods. I want to be in Pewter City by dusk, so move out. Yes, boss. The clones cried as one before vanishing in blurs, leaving behind a grinning Naruto and a paralyzed by shock Eevee. The two adults perched on a branch fell backwards from shock, the blue-haired male turning to his yellow-orange-haired counterpart. So, y'all still want to go after this kid? Butch asked with a bit of nervousness in his voice. Cuz if y'all ask me, I think he's an alien. You're an alien. Cassidy hissed, punching the man in the head. Whether he's a freak or not doesn't matter. Think of how the boss will reward us if we manage to get him. Butch paused as he thought about the possible rewards for abducting or recruiting the young trainer to Team Rocket's cause. Cassidy watched patiently before her partner's face became a goofy smile and blood dripped from his nose. The woman felt an eye twitch in irritation before slamming her fist into his head. Hentai. Naruto looked over at the sound of a pained cry before he grunted when he felt the phantom pain of being stung by a Weedle's horn. The blonde looked at his hand where he recalled being stung before he came to a realization. Holy shit, the boy whispered as a grin slowly inched across his face. I can receive the memories of clones. I wonder what else I can use this for. Oh, no time for it now. We'll think about this later. V. Kanto confirmed with a nod from his trainer's head. The Eevee was staring in the direction a clone went before it vanished from his view. Poor Kanto was trying to think of how his trainer managed to do a double team with a silly name before returning his attention to the blonde fingering his Pidgey's Pokeball. Alright, time for a name, little guy. Naruto exclaimed as he tossed the ball into the air. The ball cracked open and out came a fully refreshed Pidgey. The small bird Pokemon chirped happily as it perched on Naruto's bare arm, the trainer petting its head softly with a smile on his face. Well, you're definitely tame now, aren't ya? Guess everyone needs a good whooping now and then, Well, I could name you Sky, but that's gotta be overdone. Oh, I know. Like Kanto is Konohagakure and Kanto combined. I'll call you Verusa. I found you outside Viridian and that area reminds me of Kusa. What do you think, Verusa? Gi. The newly named Verusa chirped happily as she flew off her new trainer's arm and barrel rolled happily. Naruto laughed when Verusa flew at Kanto, sending them to the ground in a playful roll. He could tell this was going to be a fun trip. Oh. Naruto moaned as he rubbed his temples in an effort to ease the headache brewing. Before humming in interest at the last clone's memory, his two Pokemon sat in his lap, Kanto fast asleep while Verusa cleaned her feathers. As they awaited his clones to finish dispersing, the army of blondes was thinning quickly throughout the woods, all dispersing due to either miscalculated leaps or the painful attacks by Pokemon. What Naruto discovered to be the poison caterpillar known as Weedle mostly dispelled all the other clones, but it was the last and most recent one that was intriguing to him. Pulling his Pokédex out, Naruto scrolled through the machine's databanks before stopping at the Pokemon that matched what his clones saw before it dispelled. Selecting the Pokemon, the blonde trainer waited patiently for his Pokédex to load the information. Venonat. the poison gnat Pokemon. Most Venonat are rather timid, only attacking when surprised or frightened. They are most known for their unique grasp over selective psychic abilities as well as their infamous poisonous techniques. A Venonat's addition to a trainer's team is rare, but extremely rewarding in certain occasions. Grinning, Naruto looked at his two partners as he pocketed the device. Kanto, Verusa, we've got a Pokemon to catch. Gigiv. The two Pokemon questioningly said before the Pidgey was forced to fly from her trainer's lap whilst the Eevee hopped to the blonde's head as he stood. Naruto extended his arm slightly, allowing Verusa to land on it. Before he returned her to her Pokeball, the blonde holstered Verusa's ball on his hip before looking up at Kanto. How do you feel about bug-type Pokemon, Kanto? Asked the young trainer to the brown and white Pokemon, because we're going to be dealing with quite a bit before we find that Venonat. VV, Kanto replied with a wagging tail of excitement at the prospect of a new training partner and friend. Before they rested, Naruto had his two Pokemon spar against one another. Verusa had an advantage whilst she was airborne, but when Kanto would get her grounded, he would take control of the fight. Naruto discovered that Kanto was equally adept in creating clones of his own, having done so in the manner of the double-team attack that Professor Oak described beforehand. However, Verusa had also managed to create a large gust of wind that Naruto discovered via Dexter, was aptly named Gust, and promptly blew them away. Man, the blonde trainer started as he looked at the woods. There's got to be a nest in there somewhere, but I don't want to tear a family apart. What should I do? He comically allowed tears to rain down his cheeks while his Pokemon sighed from his perch. Their trainer was certainly weird, but then again, all humans were weird. The two exchanged a look before nodding. Verusa shot into the wood before Naruto could stop her, making the blonde gape at his Pokemon's action. Turning to face his Eevee, the blonde trainer asked, "Where the heck is Verusa going, Kanto simply gave him that playful smile. Oh, don't give me that. Naruto scolded with a frown. What is Verusa doing? Kanto blinked twice before widening his eyes and giving the blonde. How the hell do you know that face? Naruto exclaimed in horror at being given the puppy dog pout from his very, admitted reluctantly, adorable Pokemon. The Eevee continued to give him the look, before eventually Naruto relented. Alright, fine, I'll back off, okay. Eevee, Kanto replied happily. The fox-like Pokemon leapt up to sit on his trainer's shoulder, much like a certain yellow mouse did to his own, before a rapid chirping made his ears perk up. Kanto gave the equivalent to a pout. He just got up on his spot, and Verusa chose now to come back with a Venonat. So unfair. Gigi. The small Pidgey chirped wildly as she flew back to her trainer. Naruto blinked before his eyes widened when he saw what was following his small bird Pokemon. A group of 4 Venonat were buzzing angrily as they chased the bird. One shot something from its small mouth that struck the back of his bird Pokemon. Verusa chirped in indignation and flew around Naruto in a circular manner, glaring at the 4 approaching bugs. Kanto narrowed his eyes before he jumped down to land in front of his trainer, his hair rising as he growled. 3 of the 4 Venonat all froze instantly and shuddered. The last one jumped forward and gave an irritated buzz, to which was replied to with a growl once more, scaring off the 3 Venonat. Naruto blinked at this before looking at his Pidgey with a grin, holding his arm out for her to land on. He stroked under her chin with his finger when she did and said, "You guys planned this, huh? Nice. Kanto will deal with this guy, okay Verusa-chan." Gigi, chirped Verusa before Naruto pulled her Pokeball out and returned her did, looking back at the Venonat buzzing angrily at his Eevee. Naruto gave a grin and cracked his knuckles. "Okay Venonat," he said to the Pokemon, getting a buzz in response. "Here's my offer. You fight Kanto and if you win, you get off scot-free. You lose and you join me on my trip. Sound good?" Nat. Venonat shot back with its upper body nodding in agreement. Naruto grinned before looking at his small fox-like Pokemon. "Alright, Kanto," the blonde trainer started. "First, let's give him a test. Double team." Kanto gave the equivalent to a grin to the bug before he suddenly emitted some energy. The Venonat's red orbs widened in shock when Kanto suddenly started to replicate himself, duplicates aligning next to him from thin air. Naruto grinned. "Nice. We've only been working on it for a bit. Kanto, you've got a knack for that move. Now to really make it interesting." Holding his hand in his favorite cross, the blonde cried out, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." If the Venonat was surprised before, it was now shocked beyond belief when the same amount of blonde trainers appeared behind the Eevee. All the humans exchanged a glance before crying out at once, "Kanto, tackle that bug." Venonat buzzed in slight worry when the many duplicates charged at him, not ready to lose without a fight. It suddenly began to shake and yellow powder began to come from its fuzzy body. The powder went through a few of the Eevees, but landed on one and froze it in place. Kanto gave a weak growl as he felt his muscles begin to lock up. Naruto, seeing that this was occurring, dispelled all but one of his clones. Looking at the last clone, Naruto handed it a few bills and said, "Get back to town and go buy some ointments or something. Be sure to describe the symptoms so we know what to use." "Hi, Oyabun," the clone said before he dashed back towards the town. Venonat announced, rushing forward and driving its body into Kanto's locked up one. Naruto grit his teeth and his fist clenched as the bud began tackling his Eevee. "Hang in there, Kanto," Naruto cried out to his friend, "just a bit longer, okay?" The Venonat bristled at this. It was obviously winning and the Eevee was going to lose. Why did this human feel as though he was going to win? Shouldn't he retreat so that he could heal the Eevee? As the Venonat mused over this, its attacks continued. Breaking away from the heavily panting Pokemon, the bug buzzed in annoyance. Was it too stubborn to fall or did it trust its trainer that much? Before either party could make a move, a net suddenly shot out and wrapped around the paralyzed Eevee. The blonde trainer cried out in worry just as the Venonat buzzed in confusion. The two looked up as two laughs were heard. On a high branch nearby, a blonde-haired woman with her hair pulled back into two pigtails and triangular earrings stood next to a blue-haired man with his hair cut like a shorter version of his friend Rock Lee's. Both were wearing black outfits with a large red R on their shirts. White boots and gloves covered their hands and feet respectively. If Ero Sennin was here, he'd be drooling over the woman's short skirt and exposed stomach. "Hey, give Kanto back," Naruto cried out in anger, "before I kick your ass." "Sorry cutie, but our boss could use your Eevee more than you could," the woman replied with a wink. Her partner glanced at her in concern before smugly saying, "Yeah, so beat it." "Who the hell are you anyway?" the blonde asked with a growl. "Who just takes someone's Pokemon?" "So glad you asked," the woman said before they stood back to back. The woman tilted her head up as she spoke, "Prepare for trouble. And make it double." Her partner finished. Naruto blinked and looked at the confused Venonat. "Where's the music coming from?" he asked the Pokemon, only getting a buzz of bewilderment as an answer. "To infect the world with devastation," the woman said. "To blight all people in every nation," the partner finished. The blonde woman smirked, "To denounce the goodness of truth and love." Her partner gave an equally vile smirk, "To extend our wrath to the stars above." "Cassidy," the woman introduced herself with a wink. "And Butch," the man said pointing to himself with his thumb. "We're Team Rocket, circling Earth all day and night," Cassidy explained. "Surrender now or else you'll surely lose the fight," Butch finished. The fanfare playing in the background came to an end when a Pokemon shot out from Cassidy's hip. Rattata! A small purple rat chirped before nuzzling into Cassidy's leg. Naruto whipped his Pokédex out and aimed it at the rat Pokemon. He wasn't disappointed as Dexter spoke up. "Rattata." The small mouse Pokemon. Rattatas are fairly common and are good for first-time trainers to raise. The large teeth on this Pokemon can chew through most materials save for man-made materials, with its strongest attack being Quick Attack. The Rattata focuses on guerrilla tactics when fighting in the wild. "Okay, now I know who you are. Give Kanto back," the blonde trainer barked. Cassidy giggled. "Well, I would consider giving your little Eevee back if you joined Team Rocket," she said with a smile. Naruto blinked before frowning. "After hearing your little intro, hell no," he shot back, reaching into his right pocket for the kunai stored there. "Huh. Then your Eevee is ours. Ya freak," Butch taunted, "and your little duplicate trick won't stop us." Cassidy pouted slightly. "Pooh, I would have liked to be his teacher." "Okay, you're starting to scare me, Cass," Butch murmured as he glanced at the woman he called his partner. Naruto shivered at the woman's words, finding the idea to frighten him a bit before he pulled his kunai out. Twirling the kunai by the hole at the end, Naruto flung it up and at the rope keeping his Eevee bound. The projectile cut the rope and he dove for the bundle, catching his friend in his arms before looking to the Venonat. "Hey, if you don't want to go with them, follow me," he shouted, shaking the bug from its stupor as it quickly bounded after him into the thick woods. The two members of Team Rocket swiveled their heads to follow him and gaped. Did he just snatch his Eevee from us?" Butch asked. Cassidy nodded mutely before she growled. "That little punk. He turned me down," she snarled. Again Butch looked worriedly at his partner. Cass, are you no, Shoda?" He was cut off by the fist to the back of his head and the sudden bite on his foot, howling in pain. Butch fell off the branch to the ground. Cassidy growled lowly with a red face before looking down at her Rattata. "Let's get that little brat," Cassidy announced before she muttered under her breath. "Not a Shotokan if he's not under the age of 10. Even then, what does it matter? We're international criminals. Disturbing but true fact. Ash was 10 when our series began, right? Scary." Meanwhile, back in Konohagakure no Sato, Tsunade was glaring at the now comatose Toad Sage lying in a hospital bed. He was covered head to toe in bandages, and it had taken her village's best to stop her from outright killing the man, though she did manage to crush his balls. But she'd have to settle for that for now. More pain would come after he explained where the last place he saw her pseudo brother figure last. Suddenly, the door to the room was thrown open. In the doorway stood the last duo she wanted to see. Her sensei's former teammates, Homura and Kaharu. They had their usual scowls locked on their faces, and the stances they were standing in promised a good headache for the Godime Hokage. "Oh great," Tsunade muttered, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Come to scold me for letting the village weapon die? Senju Tsunade. Godem or not, I will not let you accuse us of inaccurate facts," Homura growled, his right fist clenched. "I trained under your grandmother personally, and Kaharu had assisted training Tashina. We of all people know exactly how you feel right now." "Homura, settle yourself before your heart gives out," Kaharu advised, getting a grumble from the elder man. Before she looked at Tsunade, the Godem was surprised by her sensei's former teammate's words. If the look on her face was anything to go by, at least, the older woman glanced to her left and narrowed her eyes at the unconscious and groaning sage. "Humph, for a man that prides himself on family, I would have at least thought had died before seeing Naruto-kun go. He was more concerned with his erotica, if I remember reading the report correctly." Homura spat, his views on the popular novella being either shown or hidden by the venom in his voice. "I will call for a banning of the literature at the next council meeting." "We're getting off track," Kaharu stated. Looking back at Tsunade, "We demand that Hiruzen's foolish law be lifted and the truth be told." "Why? So people can spit on Naruto's grave?" Tsunade countered with a growl. Homura growled back. "So that people can beg his spirit for forgiveness because they ignored the son of their Yondaime," he corrected. Tsunade felt her eyes widen before she grinned evilly. "Well, I can see how that would be entertaining, but perhaps we go just a bit further. Why don't we take this to my office where we can sit down and discuss this?" She asked the two elders. The former advisors to the Sandaime Hokage exchanged a look before agreeing with a nod. Tsunade stood and left the room, leading the two outside as they began to converse about how they would go about it. All the while, they didn't notice the soft relieved exhale that left a certain monk's lips. Kakashi slowly shut the door to the Toad Sage's hospital room, and he pulled out a kunai. His own arm was coated in blood, a testament to his personal view on his teaching, and he went to the bandaged arm of the sages. Kakashi leaned forward and whispered in the unconscious Mon's ear. "I've asked Naruto to forgive me, but I doubt he will. Same for you, however. Though he cannot physically cause you pain, I will ensure that you are reminded of your failure to him and sensei just like I am. Scream once if it hurts." The blade pierced through bandage and skin before carving into bone a few kanji for one sentence, one that mimicked the wound on Kakashi's arm. "I am a failure as a sensei." Naruto ran through the wood with Kanto frozen in his grasp. He could only think one thing as he carried the brown-furred fox through the thick brush, and that was, "Where the hell is my clone?" And then it hit him. He made the clone when he was still fighting against the Venonat that was a few paces behind him, because he had no awareness of Team Rocket at that time. Naruto rationalized, his clone wouldn't either. A new thought then went across the blonde ninja-turned-trainer's mind. When a clone disperses, do other clones get their knowledge too? Curious, Naruto shuffled Kanto around in his arms so that he could continue to carry him and yet create clones. Once he could safely perform the technique, Naruto focused his chakra and made a small group of 13 clones. 4 hanged into the Venonat running alongside him, and 4 changed into the injured Kanto that was cradled by 4 of the remaining clones, while the last dispersed immediately, nodding in content. Naruto then looked to his clones that flanked him on the left. "Split up and lead Teme rockets to the Weedle nests," Naruto ordered with hushed urgency. The clones nodded before they split off to do so. A shocked buzz got the blonde's attention, and he glanced to the wide-eyed Venonat running alongside him. Grinning cheekily, Naruto asked, "Bet you're rethinking coming with Kanto and I, right?" As though it was caught with its hand in the cookie jar, the Venonat buzzed before looking to the other direction. Naruto frowned as if he didn't understand, but looked forward rather than asking. An easy silence filled the air as they jumped through the trees towards Pewter City. Maybe he's worried about the other Venonat, the blonde trainer thought. Glancing at the still quietly buzzing Venonat on his right, Naruto studied it. It was shaking more than normal, and a yellow glow was coming from the spores that fell from it. Was it unconsciously releasing those spores? "Oyabun," a very familiar voice called. Naruto looked behind him in relief as his clone ran up to his side. It whipped out a small spray bottle and handed it to the original before dispersing. Ignoring the rush of pain, Naruto blinked before looking at the Venonat. "You're the oldest one, aren't you?" The bug looked at the human with what Naruto assumed to be shock. Before he looked forward and spoke again, "I never had that kind of responsibility. It's always been me and only me, until I graduated from school. Then I got some friends, but they were still too distant from me to be true friends. Old habits or something like that. Anyway, I didn't know you were their go-do guy. I would have left y'all alone. Hey, y'all know, It was Kanto's idea to lead you guys out to me. Verusa-chan acted under his orders. As he spoke, he slowed down to a walking pace, not knowing that the Venonat had kept its attention on him. It was entranced by the blonde's words, the nostalgic and apologetic tone hypnotizing it in a way. The Venonat then noticed Naruto had stopped talking and moving, so it bounded back towards him curiously, landing a few feet from him just to be safe. Naruto was gently spraying Kanto with the item his clone had given him. The brown Eevee gave off quiet purrs as it began loosening up due to the paralyzed heel his trainer was using. Not only did the painfully stiff feeling go away, but he was sure that the liquid wouldn't become sticky or ruin the shine of his fur. What? He was an Eevee. Looking good was part of the gig. There ya go, Kanto, the blonde said with a smile as he set the Pokemon down and watched him shake the remaining paralysis off. Better? V. Kanto confirmed with a nod. There he is. A familiar and unwelcome voice cried out. Naruto scowled and about face to defend his Pokemon when Butch and Cassidy jumped down. The former covered in swollen skin and bruises while the latter was practically untouched. Cassidy pulled her Pokeball off her hip and glared at her fellow blonde. Last chance, cutie, Naruto shuddered. Join Team Rocket, or lose your Pokemon, your call. Option C. Neither, he called back, reaching into his back pocket and pulling a handful of shuriken out. He whipped them at the two Rockets, who yelped in fear as they leapt backwards from the bladed metal projectiles. Butch growled and grabbed Cassidy's Pokeball, ignoring her irritated hey, while he threw the ball forward. Go Rattata! Butch cried with a hoarse voice. Use Hyper Fang on the kid. Ta-ta! Squeaked out the small mouse Pokemon. Naruto growled and reached down with his left hand to pull out a kunai and held it defensively. As the Rattata rushed forward, Naruto braced himself, only for his eyes to widen when the Venonat leapt in front of Naruto. Veno! The bug exclaimed with a bit of a buzz to its voice. A pair of bright twin beams shot from the compound eyes belonging to the Venonat. The beams struck the rushing Rattata, sending it back towards its own trainer. Rattata! Cassidy cried out, growling, you little. Kanto, use double team. Naruto exclaimed to his Pokemon. The Eevee nodded as he began to blur before 7 duplicates appeared alongside him. They leapt in front of the now tired Venonat defensively and growled. Naruto held his hands in his favorite seal, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 7 clones appeared flanking his right and left sides. They split up into groups of 2, the ones on the left holding their left hands up while the ones on the right began controlling the chakra. The Narutos spoke in sync, creeping their assailants out. While this happened, Kanto, keep the Teme Rockets in place while we finish this. VV, was the understanding reply. The Eevees rushed forward and began circling the 2 most appraised members of Team Rocket, closing their circle with each lap. When the 2 Rockets were back to back and Cassidy was practically suffocating her Rattata, the Eevees broke off. 4 clones appeared surrounding them, all with a shining blue orb in their hands. The Narutos grinned before leaping forward and slamming the orbs into the ground at the Rockets' feet, exclaiming proudly, Resendon. Kaishi Noroketto, spiraling sphere. Launch the Rockets. God damn it, Butch exclaimed. We'll be back you brat, but for now. We're blasting off. Cassidy cut off in horror as they were sent. Forgive me, rocketing through the sky. The Narutos standing below punched the sky as 3 of them burst into smoke. Yes, it worked, Naruto said victoriously. The Eevees faded until only 1 remained, and the original Kanto yipped happily as he leapt into his trainer's arms. The 2 then looked at the tiredly buzzing Venonat, jumping in surprise when a small group of the Pokemon surrounded it defensively. Hey, why you nice little Venonat wouldn't want to fight the ninja that just helped your friend, right? Naruto asked worriedly as he held the growling Kanto back from leaping forward. The Venonats merely buzzed a response and they hopped forward, only to stop as the one that had originally stood up against Naruto gave a loud buzz, net. Despite being utterly exhausted from using the attack that saved Naruto from, possibly, losing some limb, the Venonat pushed past its brethren and stood in front of the blonde. Buzzing at the small group, its antennae twitched occasionally, before the other bugs bowed their heads and bounded away. The purple-furred Ned then looked at the blonde expectantly before Naruto understood what he had just seen. Did you just tell them you were going with me? He asked to be sure. The Pokemon nodded and Naruto felt a smile creep across his face as he let Kanto drop to the ground to welcome the next member of the group. The Venonat cut Naruto off from his own thoughts, which were basically, I can't believe it over and over again. With a buzz, Naruto blinked twice before palming himself in the face. Right, Pokeball, he mumbled before grinning as he pulled his empty one out. You're sure about this? Net. The bug buzzed positively. Naruto nodded before tossing the ball at the Pokemon, activating the capture mode and waiting as the release button flashed between red and gray, before solidifying on gray, grinning like a madman. Naruto went to the Pokeball and picked it up just as Kanto leapt onto his shoulders. That's 2, Kanto, the blonde said to himself with a grin. tossing his newest Pokemon's ball into the air as it minimized before catching it and putting it on his belt. I think he'll call him Hyaden, because he's native to Viridian Forest, which is similar to the once small country called the Hayashi no Kuni, land of woods, before my country overtook it. Shaking his head after thinking of his home, Naruto put on a determined grin and raced forward, glancing at his Eevee out of the corner of his eyes. The blonde said, "My clones took this direction, so if we just continue, we can make it to Pewter just in time to reserve a bed at the Pokecenter." The young trainer raced forward with his smiling Pokemon resting comfortably on his shoulder, ready to face his next challenge as a Pokemon trainer and get one step closer to his goal. He was oblivious to the meeting going on across the dimensions concerning him, which in all honesty, wasn't a bad thing to be oblivious of. 9 shadowed figures stood in a dark cave, all with varying shapes and sizes, before one with glowing purple eyes spoke. "Our plans have been postponed." "Oh, what the F asterisk 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 is it this time?" One shadow asked in irritation. The purple eyes locked on it and narrowed. "The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki has been declared dead by Konohagakure no Sado." The sentence caused the room to fill with shock. The seal on his, a voice belonging to a red-eyed shadow asked in confusion. The purple eyes owner sighed softly. "I must modify the container. I don't know if the technique will work with the most powerful of the 9 missing. We will reconverse in a month's time. For now, focus on your tasks." The shadows gave uneasy nods and accepting words before flickering off. After the shadows vanished, one remained and cupped its chin. "Naruto-kun has died then, it said with a bit of unease. "That means Kurama-kun has been taken with him. Damn the boy's father. He was too smart for his own good, even if I managed to seal the rest. With the Kyuubi banished from reality, I might have to reveal myself to the world." The figure then flickered away and the tense feeling within the cavern emptied along with it. Naruto squinted his eyes as he stared at the woman standing behind the counter. "Are you sure that you are not a ninja?" Nurse Joy, of the Pewter City Pokecenter, giggled as she handed the blonde trainer his 2 Pokeballs back and his Eevee hopped over the counter. Upon his arrival to the center, he signed in and dropped his Pokemon off with the Chansey seeing as Joy was already sleeping. Before retiring, when he came out and saw Nurse Joy, the blonde snapped his head from the door to her several times before demanding to know how she beat him to Pewter from Viridian. Pewter Joy then went on to explain her family's inherited close resemblances, pulling her picture out for assistance, before pointing out her 3 centimeter in height difference from the Viridian Joy. Needless to say, Naruto was still very skeptical. "I am very sure I am not a ninja," Nurse Joy giggled. The blonde trainer kept a scrutinizing stare on the nurse for another moment before shrugging and moving Kanto to his shoulder. Waving over his shoulder, Naruto bade the woman farewell before walking out of the center. And walking smack dab into a girl his age, knocking her down. "Ow!" The girl whined, glaring up at the offending trainer. The girl had long brown hair and wore a white hat that resembled the premier ball his clone had seen on display at the market the day before, the colors accenting her blue eyes. The girl wore a fitted blue tank top that clung to her still-growing figure and a short red skirt he was certain that the man known as Jiraiya would drool over. Around her wrists were red bands and her lower calves had baggy blue socks on, her feet covered by the red sneakers she wore. Naruto was snapped from his observations when the girl growled at him. "Hey, you don't just knock a lady over and then stare at her, ya perv." Naruto bit his tongue to keep from lashing out at the girl's attitude before he offered her his hand and an apologetic smile. "Sorry about that." "Yeah, well, it's not completely your fault I guess." The girl sighed out as he helped her up. "Name's Mina Green, but you can just call me Green." Naruto Uzumaki, the blonde trainer replied with a smile. "Pleasure to meet you, Mina-chan." Mina felt her face flush at the suffix. Before pulling her hand back, she took her time to examine him before locking her attention on the brown-furred Pokemon on his shoulder. Moving at speeds Naruto couldn't comprehend, Mina had snatched the small fox off his shoulder and now cuddled him in her chest. "Ah, it's so cute." The obviously teenage girl squealed out as she suffocated Kanto. The Eevee in question looked as though it was about to evolve into a Vaporeon with how it was becoming blue. Mina looked at Naruto with a pout. "Wanna trade for it? I've got a really cute Weedle." "Hell no." Naruto immediately replied, snatching Kanto back and rescuing him from suffocation. "Kanto's my starter. No way would I ever give him up." "You started with an Eevee? Are you from Johto?" Mina asked curiously, because Professor Oak only hands out Squirtle, Charmander, and Bulbasaur. "Well, Old Man Oak gave Kanto to me," Naruto said sheepishly, shaking his head before attempting to walk past the girl. "Sorry, but I really gotta get going. Can't expect the gym leader to stay up all night waiting to lose, right?" "You're taking the gym challenge?" the brunette asked as she stepped in his path, tilting her head before putting a scrutinizing gaze on him. "Wait a minute, you said Professor Oak gave you your Eevee, right? His name is Kanto. Whatever. How come I've never seen you around Pallet Town, then?" Did you run around with Gary Oak? Naruto snorted and crossed his arms while Kanto growled before he replied, Run with Jerry the jerk? Hell no, I am. Hey, is that Zapdos? Zapdos? Mina and several other trainers asked, swiveling around to look for the rare Pokemon, but upon finding nothing, she turned back to find the blonde gone and in his place a log. What the? Mina murmured, furrowing her brows before looking around for the blonde, whoever that Naruto guy was. He was a mystery waiting to be solved, and Mina Green loved her some mysteries. A buzzing got her attention and Mina swallowed. She'd get right on finding that blonde, right after she got Diddy's poisoning taken care of, stupid Weedles. That was close, right, Kanto? Naruto asked his Pokemon, who had retaken his perch on the blonde's shoulder. The Eevee nodded in agreement, his tail wagging slightly as Naruto reached up to scratch under his chin. The blonde trainer sighed and looked to the sky before muttering, I've got to figure out a cover in case I get in that sort of situation again. Sure, Ash might be inclined to believe me because of Mom, but others like that Mina girl. Kanto cut his trainer off from the train of thought, as the fox-like Pokemon's attention was now on a building to their right. Naruto turned to follow his Eevee's gaze, before a grin came over his face. Pewter City Gym, nice job, Kanto. The blonde said with excitement in his voice, before he barged through the doors. Naruto stopped and took a step back, cupping his chin and falling into a thinking stance. The blonde spoke softly to himself. Wait, what do I know about this gym leader? The excited teen within him wanted nothing more than to burst through the doors and shout his challenge to the sky. But the tactical shinobi mind that was coming to surface with each day in this new dimension said that more information was required before he did anything. That and it would be safer for his own Pokemon if he scouted the competition before taking action, not to mention he still had to train with Hyuden at least once before taking this challenge, because nothing sucked more than fighting without a link to your teammate. Naruto then made a list of the attacks his Pokemon knew, starting with the newest. Dexter said that Beam attack was called Psybeam and mostly mature Venonat learned the attack. Hyuden also knows Stun Spore and Tackle, like Kanto and Verussa, but he also has that String Shot attack that most bug Pokemon know. Verussa has Gust and Sand attack, while Kanto has Headbutt and Double Team. Maybe I should train with them some more before we do anything concerning this gym. Naruto's shinobi mind thought rationally. Then the loyal Dobi mindset spoke up. Yeah, but if I take too long, I might never find Mew and it will take longer to get home. How would I become Hokage then? How could I save Sasuke then? Do I even want to get home? Naruto suddenly thought to himself, unaware that he was walking away from the gym. He walked until he was on the outskirts of the forest, his arms crossed and his head bowed in thought. Kanto looked at his trainer curiously, not liking the aura radiating from the blonde. The small fox-like Pokemon gave the blonde's cheek a small lick, getting Naruto to look at him from the corner of his eyes. A new thought then crossed Naruto's mind. Would Kanto be able to come with me? He thought, turning and leaning against a tree, or Verussa, or even Hyuden. Would I see them again if I couldn't bring them? Naruto's depressing thought process was broken when Kanto grew impatient and leapt down from his perch, jumping back, and then driving his head into the blonde's gut. Naruto gasped and his arms went across his stomach as the air rushed from his lungs. Cough K Kanto. What the F asterisk asterisk asterisk? He asked the Eevee. Kanto growled at him once more before going to his left side and pressing his, Kanto's, nose against the buttons of Viruses and Hyaden's Pokeballs. Red beams escaped the Pokeballs before the Venonat and Pidgey found themselves at their trainer's feet. Nat? The two Pokemon asked the one that released them. Kanto sat on his hind haunches and took a deep breath before he began talking to his fellow teammates. The two Pokemon listened as the Eevee explained, in words hidden within his language, that their trainer was starting to act gloomy and depressing. The Pidgey chirped worriedly and hopped to Naruto's arm, landing on it and nestling into his side with a few soft coos. Kanto followed Virus's example, leaping to his favorite perch and draping himself over his trainer's shoulders. He looked at the reluctant Venonat before growling, getting an annoyed buzz for his action. Hyuden, despite his annoyance, followed and waddled to the astounded blonde trainer's other side, shuffling himself into Naruto's side with a buzz. Naruto looked at his two captured Pokemon before looking at Kanto, who gave him that mischievous smile, before the blonde started to chuckle. Patting Hyuden on the head and then stroking Virus's feathers gently, Naruto stood, prompting his group to drop down and look up at him expectantly, shaking his head. The trainer eyed the Eevee with mock suspicion. How is it that we've only been a team for a month and yet you can read me like a book? Was the innocent reply he was given. Naruto shook his head before clapping his hands together. Right then. If we're not going to mope, we might as well train. Verussa-chan, I want you and Hyuden to spar. Verussa chirped in understanding while the Venonat simply nodded. Naruto held his hand up in his signature seal, creating two clones to work with the two Pokemon while he led Kanto a bit away, deeper into the woods. I swear. That's the last time I call home and ask about a boy, Mina muttered to herself as she and her ditto, aptly named Diddy, walked around the town. Diddy had taken on the appearance of a Meowth, walking on all fours unlike another that was currently flying through the sky. Mina sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. Daddy, why are you so embarrassing? Did some ruffian touch my princess? Does she need her daddy to kick his ass god? The other trainers heard that, and Buzz even got in on that rant. The brunette cut herself off as she heard a loud explosion come from the forest. Looking down at her faithful ditto, Mina said, "Let's go. Diddy. Someone could be hurt." Mito. The ditto chimed, its cry being at first one of a Meowth's, but ending in one of a ditto's. The girl from Pallet Town and the disguised ditto ran through the brush and their eyes widened at what they saw. The surprise was so great that Diddy's transformation fell, leaving behind a single pink gelatin-like Pokemon. In front of their eyes, there were now several blondes training in hand-to-hand combat. Sitting on the sidelines was the cute Eevee, a Venonat, and PP Pidgey, Mina squeaked, her body locking up with fear. Bird Pokemon were not her favorite type. In fact, she had a small phobia of them, from the smallest Pidgey to the large Articuno. She didn't know what it was about the birds, but they just freaked her out. Hey, no fair, Oyabun. You didn't say we could use Kanai. A blonde shouted, snapping her gaze away from the bird and to the blonde teen in the center with a dark blade held in a reversed grip. He grinned as a bead of sweat went down the side of his head. Never said we couldn't either, Naruto countered, leaping at the clone that spoke and cutting him on the arm. The blonde doppelganger gasped before it burst into smoke and vanished from existence. It was then Kanto noticed their audience. The brown-furred Pokemon hopped to his feet and growled in Mina's direction, making the girl gesture for him to be quiet. V. Kanto cried to his trainer, making the many blondes to look at him, before they followed his gaze and locked eyes with Mina. Naruto blinked a few times before palming his head, his clones all following his example and dispelling themselves in the process. The blonde trainer reached his hip and recalled Verussa and Hyaden to their Pokeballs. Walking over to his loyal and protective Eevee, Naruto knelt down to gently stroke the rising white fur on the back of Kanto's neck to calm him, before looking at the sheepish brunette and asking, "Well, what can I do for ya, Mina?" What are you?" Mina asked with a stutter. Naruto gave a sly grin to the girl as he scooped Kanto up and stood. The Eevee went to his shoulder almost immediately and growled quietly at the girl. Since their encounter at the Pokecenter, Kanto had decided being suffocated was not how he wanted to go. "I am a Pokemon trainer. I am pretty sure we've been through this," the blonde teased as he walked back towards the town, before looking at his Pokemon. "So Kanto, what should we do next?" V. The small Eevee chimed happily as he looked at a building with a blue rooftop. Naruto laughed. Okay, I'll go buy some snacks for you, Verussa-chan and Hyaden," he said, completely unaware that Mina had recalled Diddy and decided to follow him. Entering the store, he was greeted by a messenger that bowed his head. "Mr. Naruto Uzumaki?" the red-suited messenger asked. Naruto nodded before accepting the note, giving the man a bill before he left in thanks. Before he could open the letter, Mina swooped in from behind and snatched the letter, examining it. "Hey!" Naruto cried out, frowning. "Give it back, Mina." I'll give it back, if you trade with me," the brunette said, trying to pull the pleading Pokemon eye move off on the blonde. Naruto felt his eye twitch. "You may be cute, but you are not that cute," the blonde admitted with a small blush. He snatched the letter from her grasp and opened it, flipping the paper out and reading it. "Dear Naruto, it's Mom. Just wondering how your journey is going so far. I know I could have called, but this seemed more appropriate, seeing as you're still not used to the telephones we have. I also wanted to tell you that Ash has fallen into a bit of trouble outside Vermilion City. Professor Oak wanted me to warn you about Team Rocket, a group of criminals that have been targeting Ash and Pikachu. Be safe, and keep looking for Mew. Love, Mom. P.S. Ash's Pokemon count just reached 7. He now has a Krabby waiting here on Oak's ranch. Nothing wrong with some sibling competition, right?" Naruto smiled, folding the letter up and tucking it in his jacket. That was awfully considering of his mom, Delia Ketchum, to write him a letter. How it beat him to Pewter City, he wasn't sure, but then again, he didn't know what the postal service was like in this world. Looking at an equally smiling Kanto, Naruto grinned before he spoke. "Looks like the Tem Rockets aren't just after you, Kon. Seems like Ash has been dealing with them, too." V. Teme Rockets? Do you mean Team Rocket? A worried Mina suddenly asked. Naruto looked at her with a small bit of confusion before grinning reassuringly. "Ah, we just met and you're worried about me. How nice," he blonde said with a snicker afterwards. "Don't worry about those teams. They're just a bunch of posers." Hey, you said you were taking the gym leader challenge, right? Mina asked. Naruto nodded in confirmation, keeping his true agenda hidden from the girl. The brunette suddenly smiled and wrapped her arms around one of his. looking up at him with a smile. Well, I am just trying to catch every Pokemon I can. I want to be the next Professor Oak, she declared in the department store. The people within sighing as they ignored the common loudness that most trainers seemed to have. Looking at the uneasy blonde with a cute pout, Mina asked, "Can we travel together? I promise to back off trading with you if we do." Already one win for me, but why? Naruto asked himself before looking at Kanto. What do you think? V, growl, Kanto replied, glaring at the girl that nearly killed him. Mina pouted at the small fox-like Pokemon, and within seconds, his growls stopped and Kanto hung his head in defeat. Damn feminine wiles. Okay. Why do you want to join me? Naruto asked with an arched brow and crossed arms. I mean, surely there's better trainers to travel with. Well, aside from the fact that you're cute and your Pokemon are too, Mina started, internally smirking at the shade of red that went across the blonde's face. You're an enigma, and as the next great Pokemon professor, I plan to solve you. Naruto's eye twitched. He wasn't an enigma, damn it. He practically shouted his feelings to the world. Sure, he was a ninja, but that's different. Okay. How does this benefit me? He asked, very unsure of how to react to this girl at the moment. She didn't act like most of the girls he knew, but then again, those girls were across dimensions and were violent kunoichi. That seemed to shut her up while he shopped, and she didn't reply until after they had left the Pokémart. Oh, I know about the gym leaders and the types of Pokemon they favor, Mina said with a smile, and I am a master of disguise. I can get any information at any time thanks to Diddy. Diddy? Naruto asked, and even Kanto was curious if the tilting of his head was anything to go by. Grinning, Mina pulled a Pokeball out from her satchel and tossed it into the sky. The ball cracked open and a small pink blob landed in front of the blonde, just as Mina caught the falling ball and placed it back in her bag. Ditto. The small Pokemon exclaimed happily, two parts of the blob extending in a ta-da position like arms. Naruto had whipped Dexter out faster than Mina could see and he patiently waited for the device to scan the Pokemon. Dexter then beeped before it spoke. Ditto. The transform Pokemon, a Ditto has the unique ability to transform into a different species, becoming a true replica of that Pokemon down to the techniques it knows. However, the Ditto's transformation is a weakness as well as a strength, seeing as the attacks it momentarily learns from changing are only temporary and are much weaker than the base Pokemon's attacks. A shapeshifter, cool. Like a henge Pokemon, Naruto said with a grin, crouching down to get a look at the small blob as he pocketed his Pokédex. The Ditto locked eyes on the Eevee perched on his shoulder and instantly transformed, becoming an exact duplicate down to the small scratches on Kanto's ear from sparring against Verussa. Diddy sat on his haunches and tilted his head. Veto. The changed Pokemon said. Naruto chuckled as Kanto dropped down to begin a small mirroring test with the copying Pokemon. He glanced at a very proud Mina. How does Diddy? He asked, checking to see if he got the name right. Getting a nod from the brunette, Naruto continued. How does Diddy help you in disguise? Like this, Diddy. Transform. She instructed while pointing at the blonde. The Eevee Ditto looked at its trainer before changing back. It suddenly launched itself at her face and began changing to an exact replica of Naruto's face. The face grinned as it spoke with Mina's voice. Diddy can change my face to match anyone I've met, and keeping those I don't want to see me ignorant. Handy, Naruto admitted as the Ditto dropped and his face left the girl's body. That would be useful for shinobi who couldn't use the technique like Rock Lee, but still, henge was better. Alright, I guess there's no harm in letting you tag along for a bit, Naruto admitted before frowning, but if you can't keep up, I won't slow down, okay? PSH, I am sure I can keep up, Blondie. The girl brushed off his warning. It's not like the guy could run as fast as a Dodrio or Rapidash, right? Oh, if only she knew. Welcome to the group then, Naruto said with a smile before asking in a serious tone. What do you know about Pewter City's gym leader? You're asking already. Huh, here I thought you would have wanted to train a bit more. Mina teased. Naruto smirked secretively, which unnerved the brunette, before she shook the feeling off and continued. Well, 2 months ago, it was Brock, but now his father, Flint, is in charge of the gym. Some rookies have been complaining that they lost because he used his other 10 children as a shield. Asking around, I learned that the 10 of them usually acted on their own when that occurred. They're very protective of their father's Pokemon. What type does he use? Naruto asked as Kanto leapt back up to his shoulder. The Eevee had an equally serious look on its face that made Mina want to squeeze it once more, but she restrained herself. From what I hear he uses ground and rock types, Mina said. Naruto hummed and cupped his chin. Ash was either really lucky against this gym leader, or he had a water Pokemon on his side, the blonde mused. If they're ground and rock types, I am better off not throwing Hyden at them. He'd be down before the match could start. Verussa-chan might be a better choice, but seeing as she's a bird Pokemon, I can't be positive. I might have to go find another Pokemon before I do anything, because there's no way in hell I am letting Kanto fight on his own. V. Speak of the devil. The small Pokemon perched on his shoulder appeared to be reading his mind once again and was giving him a determined stare. Smiling at the look, Naruto reached up to scratch the Eevee behind his ear before he spoke. Alright, looks like we're training before we go face this Flint guy. Looking at the brunette that decided to beat his tag along, Naruto asked, You coming, Mina-chan? Blushing again at the suffix, Mina nodded. Naruto then looked around almost like he was worried, before grinning at her. Oh, and don't tell anyone what you see, okay? A week passed and Naruto had to say he was very pleased with the outcome of his training. He decided to go towards Mount Moon to get some training in. Rather than go back to the Forest of Bugs, while training near Mount Moon, Naruto learned a bit more about his new companion, and Mina learned a lot about the blonde. Compared to what she knew before, she still didn't know about his past, but she knew that he was the unofficial elder brother to the loudmouth Ash Ketchum. The blonde also revealed he was a type of ninja, like the trainers in Fuchsia, hence why he could do a lot of amazing things. Naruto looked at the eager Pokemon seated on his shoulder. Kanto had grown nearly an inch in length, making him just a bit larger than the average Eevee. He also managed to learn a few tricks that Naruto was impressed with while Mina was just downright baffled by. The brown coat of his Eevee was lighter and looked almost like a very dark red. Naruto thought it looked good, but internally wondered if his tenant was doing anything to his Pokemon. Hyuden had managed to get some training in as well, enhancing his endurance when it came to the Psybeam. There was no longer a waiting period to use it in a repetitive manner, and not only that, but the Venone had managed to learn another psychic technique known as confusion, although the way that he tended to use it on Naruto kind of pissed the blonde off. Then again, at least it wasn't a thundershock. How Ash dealt with that, Naruto will never know. He was especially proud of Virus's achievements in their training. The bird Pokemon had gone leaps and bounds to please him. And he wasn't disappointed. Verussa managed to learn a few other wind-related attacks that were pretty effective against rock-type Pokemon. Combine that with the fact that she seemed to have a mischievous side when it came to Mina, who was still terrified of the bird, much to Naruto's amusement. Verussa loved to land on Mina's shoulder when the girl was watching her Ditto play with her Wigglytuff. The resulting scream was ear-shattering, but her constant clinging was hysterical, until the 10th time. Then it really started to get painful and awkward. Oh come on, Mina-chan, Naruto said to the girl that was currently hanging over his back with her arms around his neck. It was a sparrow. One sparrow. You can't tell me that one sparrow is that scary. Shut up, Naruto. The brunette stuttered out, burying her face into the blonde's back as her arms tightened. I hate birds. They're just so, eek. Now in the amused blonde's arms, Mina frightfully stared at Verussa, who shot out of her Pokeball. The Pidgey chirped happily as she flew around the chuckling blonde before landing on his free shoulder, getting a glare from Mina at being so close. Mina? Don't you think we've played newlyweds long enough? Naruto asked, a bit annoyed with the looks he was receiving from the people of Pewter, and the whispers he could hear were embarrassing. They were 13, not 27. Why would they get married? Mina, pausing to see what her new friend meant, gained an atomic blush as she jumped out of his arms and landed a good distance away from him on her feet. Naruto shook his head and recalled Verussa to her Pokeball. He knew the girl wouldn't walk next to him so long as his Pidgey was out. You really need to get her under control, Mina muttered as she walked next to Naruto with her head bowed so that her hat hid her blush. The blonde scratched his head sheepishly. Yeah, sorry about that. Naruto apologized, more for the embarrassing situation than his Pidgey's antics. Why would he apologize for that when he found them hilarious? So, you ready for this? I mean, you've only trained for a week and even then you usually left the training to your clones. Mina still wasn't used to Naruto's duplication technique, finding it just a bit strange. After all, there weren't many people who could make hundreds of copies of themselves from thin air. Naruto simply grinned secretively, his left hand brushing over the third Pokeball on his hip for a brief second. He had nearly forgotten about him. If Verussa or even Kanto couldn't hold their own against Flint's Pokemon, then he surely could. Glancing at his Eevee, who had noticed the blonde's hand's action, he winked at the Pokemon. Kanto gave the equivalent of a smirk before looking forward. Taking a deep breath, Naruto looked at the door in front of him. This was it. The first step to becoming a master waited for him behind this door. He reached forward and wrapped his hand around the handle, gripping the metal tightly, before turning it and pushing it in. Laughter stopped as his first step into the room made a quiet, but noticeable sound. 22 eyes locked on him from the front and Naruto paused before grinning. My name is Naruto Uzumaki from Pallet Town, he started. I am here to challenge Gym Leader Flint. My name is Naruto Uzumaki from Pallet Town, Naruto exclaimed. I am here to challenge Gym Leader Flint. The room was dead quiet before a dark-skinned man with squinted eyes sighed in relief. Pulling the pink apron he was wearing for some reason off of himself, the man who Naruto assumed was Flint tossed said article to the side and whistled. There was a rumbling and from the back of the gym, 2 Pokemon ran up. One had a small lizard-like head attached to a large boulder that acted as its body. Its body was a worn dark brown and the skin, scales, was a very light brown, similar to a desert. The other Pokemon looked like a rhinoceros with short legs, except its body was covered in blue-gray rocky plates rather than skin, and along its back was a protruding ridge. The both of them had several children hanging off of them like they were some sort of ride. Flint shook his head in disbelief and shooed the kids away. The second oldest, Forrest, as he was introduced, stayed behind and crossed his arms. Acting quickly, Naruto whipped his Pokédex out, aiming first at the boulder. Dexter took a moment before it beeped. Golem. The megaton Pokemon, golems can weigh up to 700 pounds, depending on their surroundings, as their normal mode of quick transportation is to retreat within their bodies and roll, picking up and building onto their large boulder-like shells. The shell will shed every few years or so, but only a very thin layer that crumbles immediately afterwards. Warning. Golems are known as stubborn creatures and tend to, like an electrode, self-destruct upon being backed into a proverbial corner. Damn, Naruto muttered before looking at the rhinoceros. Dexter shuffled to the next bit of data quickly. Rhyhorn. The Spike's Pokemon, Rhyhorn's thick hide is hard enough to withstand being struck by an electric baton. Discovered early on in the attempts to fence the Safari Zone in Fuchsia City, due to its short legs, Rhyhorns are only capable of running in one direction and are not very good at turning on the spot. Some believe that due to its small brain, Rhyhorns often find themselves charging at something for reasons they cannot remember. At that, Flint's Rhyhorn looked offended, looking at the golem and grunting questionably. The golem shook its head and they glared at the blonde, who held his hands up in a placating manner. Whoa, I didn't think that, Naruto nervously said, a bunch of sweat forming up on the back of his head. I mean, you were trained by a gym leader, so you've got to be somewhat smarter than the average Rhyhorn, right? The two Pokemon lessened their glares and nodded stiffly, before glaring at the growling Eevee perched on the blonde's shoulder. Kanto didn't back down and prepared for a fight, but Naruto looked at him from the corner of his eyes, silently telling him to back off. The small fox-like Pokemon frowned as he stopped. So your name's Naruto, huh? Flint asked, arching a brow as he cracked his neck. You're the first new guy in a month. Mind if I ask why you are not just gonna give up? The kids started jeering from the balcony as Naruto stood opposite of Flint on the surprisingly small field. The blonde trainer ignored them in favor of watching the gym leader as he scolded his kids silently, staring up at them in disapproval. The familiar pang of envy went through Naruto as he watched the kids shrink under their father's look. Shaking the feeling off, he gave a small grin to the gym leader once he had his attention back. Because as the next Ho-Worm, Pokemon Master, I can't just back down from a challenge, Naruto proudly exclaimed, looking at his equally proud Eevee with a grin. As long as I work hard and train with my Pokemon, we can't be stopped. Flint chuckled. You remind me of a boy I met a while ago. Not your words, but your heart. He liked to talk loud, too. However, something tells me that unlike him, you might just win the Boulder Badge on your first try. Life's never that easy, Naruto countered with a frown before examining the field. I will admit, the gym isn't as I thought it would be. Flint grinned. You're right, it's lacking a little oomph. At that word, the ground split along the white lines and shifted back. Initially surprised by the ground's movement, Naruto leapt up and stood on the ceiling, catching Kanto in his arms before gravity pulled him down. The blonde felt his eyes widen as a second, more appropriate, field was revealed. The terrain was all dirt and large rocks were scattered around the field. Hey kid, how's the weather up there? Flint called jokingly once he had gotten over his initial shock at the blonde's reaction to the ground's shifting. Naruto blinked innocently before sheepishly dropping to the ground. As soon as he had righted himself and Kanto returned to his second favorite perch, atop the blonde's head, a bit of Pokemon food bounced off the side of his head. Glaring at the offending thrower, Mina, Naruto asked, Oi, don't throw things at me, Mina-chan. Stop doing those weird ninja things and I will. You keep that up and it won't take much for them to figure out where you are. The brunette chided. The blonde waved her off and cracked his knuckles in anticipation. Looking at Kanto, Naruto nodded, before the Eevee ran out to the field. An Eevee, EH. Flint mused as he scratched his chin. Interesting choice. Golem, roll for it. Go. The large boulder Pokemon grunted out before retreating into its shell, rolling out onto the field. The tanned body came back out from the boulder-like shell before it fixed a glare on Kanto and snorted. Forrest, it's your turn. Flint called to one of the kids, who nodded before running down the stairs. He emerged with 2 flags in his hands, one red and one green. The following is a 2-on-2 match. The 9-year-old boy called out, Pokemon cannot be exchanged unless knocked out. Challenger ready? Believe it, Naruto confirmed before Kanto smacked a pebble back into his face. Gah. You ungrateful little. Gym leader Flint. Ready? Forrest asked his dad, who nodded. You know I am. Flint said with a nod, while Golem stomped its feet and grunted viciously. Fight! The boy exclaimed as he dropped both flags. Naruto quickly recovered and his stance hardened before he called out, Kanto, use agility and sand attack. V. Nodded out the small fox-like Pokemon before vanishing in a blur towards the giant boulder, suddenly coming to a stop and sending a large cloud of sand into the eyes of his opponent. The Golem cried out in anger as it rubbed its red, eyes. Golem, use Stone Edge. Flint called out. Golem shook its head to clear the sand from its eyes before plunging its right claw into the ground and pulling out a large pointed stone. Kanto was forced to jump back as the sharp edge was slashed at him, narrowly missing and slicing a bit of fur from his chest. The reddish-brown Eevee gave a growl of annoyance. He might be one of the more laid-back Eevees, but no one touches the neck fur. Ever. Without prompting from Naruto, Kanto charged forward and ducked his head. Kanto, wait! Naruto cried out, only to be ignored as Kanto continued with his headbutt. Golem had a gleam in its eye as the Eevee charged forward and brought its head back before giving the Eevee a headbutt of his own. The two skulls collided and the Pokemon stumbled back from each other, both a bit dazed. Golem, use Rollout! The gym leader cried. The Golem quickly retreated into its shell and began spinning in place before racing towards the still dazed Eevee. The collision made Naruto wince, as Kanto was sent tumbling backwards before pushing himself to his feet. Before the small fox-like Pokemon could fully recover, Golem came back around and ran him over again, and again, and again. After the final rollout, Naruto shook his head in disbelief before calling out, Kanto. Come on, get up, snap out of it. The Eevee groaned and shook his own head vigorously before glaring at the Golem that smirked back. Naruto, relieved his Pokemon recovered, quickly barked out, use agility and double team. Follow it with your runaround maneuver. Flint watched curiously as the Eevee ran towards his Pokemon before duplicates flickered into existence around him. Kanto then ran in a tight circle around the Golem, the sand being kicked up from his speed blinding the Pokemon. Golem. Flint called out, use Earthquake, then follow with another rollout attack. Kanto, jump, Naruto ordered with a look of concern as the boulder Pokemon lifted its leg and slammed it into the ground. Naruto sighed in relief when his Pokemon followed instructions before grinning as an idea came to mind. While the Golem retreated into its shell and begun to spin in place like a rotating planet, the blonde shinobi looked at his still airborne Eevee and called out, Kanto, try to spin in the opposite direction and use Headbutt. The Eevee wasn't sure what his trainer was thinking, but went through with the plan nonetheless, spinning as he descended. Kanto tucked his chin into his chest and growled as he fell towards his opponent. The watching children and Mina had wide eyes as the two spinning Pokemon collided. A large dust cloud shot up, encasing the arena, and Naruto clenched his teeth. Come on, he thought worriedly before paling when the Golem was the only one standing. Quietly, Naruto mumbled, no. Winner is. But before Forrest could finish, Golem groaned and fell forward, revealing a heavily panting Eevee standing on its back, looking at his father, who nodded. Spade frowned before begrudgingly raising the red flag. Winner is Kanto. All right. Naruto cheered as he punched the air. Kanto gave a tired smile to his trainer before his eyes rolled into his head and he fell forward unconscious. Naruto quickly whipped out his Eevee's Pokeball and recalled the unconscious Pokemon. As the ball shrunk, Naruto smiled fondly at it. Nice job, Kanto, he silently praised before holstering the Pokeball and pulling out his newest addition to his team's Pokeball. Naruto looked at it with a grin before looking up as Flint's Rhyhorn walked out to the field. With a smirk, Naruto cocked his hand back before tossing it up. Halfway there, you can do it, Yama-moon. The blonde exclaimed as the ball cracked open and a white light shot out. A grayish-blue humanoid almost 3 feet tall appeared with its hands on its hips. Though it looked like a child, it had impressive muscles on its arms and chest. Atop its head were 3 lightly tanned crests and on either side of its chest were 3 lines. A short tail stuck out from its behind and its light red eyes hardened. No way! Flint's kids exclaimed while Mina whipped her own Dexter out in confusion. Dexter scanned the Pokemon before beeping. Machop, the superpower Pokemon. Machop are driven by the desire to prove their might, going as far as to bench Gravelers and curl Geodudes if given the chance. Although this behavior may make Machop seem like a loner Pokemon, in reality they are very friendly. Machop also make for great movers, as the only payment they require is a small bag of Poke food. When did Naruto pick a Machop up? Mina asked herself as she stared at the Pokemon in wonder. Ready for this, Yama-moon? Naruto asked, getting a thumbs up from the Pokemon in question. Chop, he confirmed with a smirk. The Machop rolled his neck before settling into a stance Flint didn't recognize. A Machop, you've been training up at Mount Moon. Flint realized before grinning, explains why your Eevee could take and deliver so much damage. Nah, Kanto's naturally that strong. Naruto defended his Pokemon with a smirk, and Yama is the same way. Chop. Yama confirmed with a nod before bringing his hands together and cracking his knuckles. Flint grinned and looked at the Rhyhorn to his left. You're up, Rhyhorn. Mo I am down, ordered the gym leader. HRN, grunted out the large Pokemon before it walked onto the stadium field. Naruto watched the new creature with calculating eyes before looking at his Machop. Be careful, Yama, the blonde said to his newest Pokemon, who nodded once without looking away. Forrest smirked briefly before lifting the two flags in his hands up. Match 2 between gym leader Flint and challenger Naruto. Challenger ready? Believe it, Naruto confirmed before Hyuden suddenly shot out of his Pokeball and used confusion. The blonde suddenly punched himself in the face, making the audience look at him as he glared at the bug Pokemon. You suck, Hyuden, growled out the trainer before he recalled the Venonat. Once he did so, he got to his feet and nervously asked, did that disqualify me or something? Flint chuckled in amusement. No, I am ready, Forrest. The snickering referee nodded and dropped the flags. F fight. Rhyhorn, use body slam. Flint ordered as his demeanor changed into a more serious one. The plated Pokemon grunted before charging towards Yama. Yama's eyes widened and an excited grin crossed his face. Yama, use focus energy. Naruto called out, grinning. The Machop did as instructed and brought his arms up in front of him in an X formation. Yama closed his eyes and took a deep breath. What's he? Oh no. Flint's eyes widened as he came to a startling realization before calling out worriedly, Rhyhorn, stop. Too far in its own attack, Rhyhorn continued with its charge before jumping into the air rather impressively. As it descended, Rhyhorn's eyes widened when it saw the Machop glowing. Now Yama, Naruto said with a smirk, release the energy and use seismic toss. Chop, exclaimed the human-like Pokemon as his arms shot to his sides, energy exploding around him as his forearms and biceps expanded. Yama's mouth curled upwards in a smirk as he extended his arms in preparation to catch the descending Pokemon. Rhyhorn could only feel its eyes widen in horror as the smaller Pokemon caught it effortlessly by the front leg, before spinning counterclockwise and tossing it back towards Flint. Naruto wasn't finished, because as soon as Rhyhorn was on a trip back to his trainer, Naruto called out, now follow up with Karate Chop. Chop, the Machop exclaimed with a grin, quickly pushing off his left foot and rushing at the airborne Pokemon with his right arm raised above his head. Once he was parallel with the Rhyhorn, Yamamoon brought his arm down and slammed the surprisingly blunt edge of his hand into the plated Pokemon's head. Rhyhorn released a mild grunt before impacting with the ground and skidding to a stop. Flint's jaw clenched as he resisted the urge to run to the Pokemon and check on him. When movement caught his eye, looking to the right, Flint cried out, Timmy, stop right now. Naruto's attention followed Flint's gaze and it locked on a boy around the age of 5 that was approaching from the stairway. His destination obviously being his father's Rhyhorn. Doing a quick double take, Naruto wasn't surprised to see the other children on the stairs. Seeing as Mina told him about their cheating ways earlier, he actually felt a smile cross his face when he saw them, thinking they would each be good trainers in their own right soon enough. Be but daddy, Timmy whined. Flint's stony gaze hardened even more and the boy shrunk back. Get back to the observation area, all of you, Flint said sternly as his eyes narrowed further. Now. The kids, tears in their eyes, nodded and quickly retreated back to the top of the stairs, worried for their father's Pokemon. Flint's gaze lingered on them before looking to Naruto apologetically. I am sorry, he said with a small frown. We may have to postpone this match so I may hire a babysitter. Tell that to your Rhyhorn, Naruto said with a small smile, pointing at the Pokemon struggling to get up. He took full advantage of that little break, but he wasn't the only one. Now YAMA Moon. What? Flint exclaimed as he looked up to the rafters, where Naruto's fighting Pokemon hung. The Machop grinned and nodded before releasing the beam it was hanging from and fell towards the tired Rhyhorn. Machop, Yama suddenly cried out, bringing his hand down onto the Rhyhorn's head. Naruto and Flint winced when the blow connected and dust shot up, encasing the arena once more. When the cloud cleared, it showed Machop gripping his left arm while flexing before giving Naruto a thumbs up and a grin. A green spandex teen's image appeared next to the Pokemon and Naruto chuckled. Should have named him Lee. Nah, Yamamoon is similar to bushy brows, but they are not the same, mused the blonde trainer before looking to the awestruck Flint. Flint blinked before chuckling as he recalled Rhyhorn. Ha ha ha, wow, kid, your Machop's got a big set. Flint chuckled out as he looked to a disgruntled Forrest. Go grab the box, Forrest. Humph, yeah fine, Forrest grumbled out as he left towards the back of the gym. Flint followed him before approaching the blonde, who had walked up to congratulate his fighting-type Pokemon. Naruto patted Yamamoon on the shoulder before recalling him and offering his hand to the gym leader. Flint took the offered limb and shook the blonde's hand. "You're a good kid, Naruto. I can see great things coming from you." "Thanks, Flint. That was a good match," Naruto said before looking at Forrest as he approached with a box in his hand. Flint took the item from his son and opened it towards Naruto. Within the box was an octagonal pin, a light grayish brown. Naruto stared at it before hesitantly taking the pin. "That's the boulder badge," Flint said with a smile. "It proves to the lead that you've met the conditions I've set forth. The conditions being your unbreakable determination. You came in strong, and now you're leaving stronger." "Wow," Naruto said as he held the badge up to the light in admiration. "So this is what Ash is going around collecting, huh?" Flint and Forrest blinked. The father and son exchanged a look before Flint asked, Ash Ketchum?" Naruto looked back at the gym leader with a grin. "Yup, he's my little brother." Flint and his children felt their eyes widen. "Your ASH's older brother." Naruto blinked owlishly before he replied, "Yeah, thought I said that." But Ash told me he was an only child," Flint said with wide eyes. "Huh, when did he pass through puber?" the blonde trainer asked. "I am trying to catch up to him to relay a message from our mom." A while ago," Flint said, scratching his head as Mina walked down from the observation area. "Man, your dad must have been one heck of a guy. You look nothing like your brother." "Oh, that's because I am adopted," Naruto replied with a shrug of indifference before walking towards the gym doors, unknowingly leaving a frozen Mina behind with the frozen Boulder family as he went to the Poke Center to heal his team. Adopted? He didn't tell me he was adopted. Then again, I never asked, Mina thought with a frown before shaking her head and rushing after her companion. "Hey, wait up, Whiskers." "God damn it, Mina-chan, I told you not to call me that," Naruto called back from beyond the doors. Flint blinked before chuckling. "Oh yeah," Flint said with a small smile. "Naruto Uzumaki, that's a trainer that'll be remembered forever." Tsunade sighed as she signed another document marking a completed mission before looking to the setting sun. Another sigh escaped her lips as she looked at the picture on her desk, the most recent picture she had of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. The young genin was standing proudly alongside her during her coronation to the Hokage mantle. He had a large smile on his face and was looking past her to the crowd that was below them. It had been 2 months since his death, and 1 month since Jiraiya the Sannin was arrested for allowing the death of a royal. Upon resurfacing Naruto's heritage, Tsunade and her sensei's old teammates, had discovered that his mother, Kushina, came from the direct line of Uzumaki hierarchy, the same line her own grandmother was a part of. This news went directly to the Fire Daimyo, who after hearing said news, ordered the legendary spy's arrest. It was called the trial heard across the nations by the newspaper industry, despite the accused, Jiraiya, pleading guilty with a bowed head. In the trial, Naruto's true childhood came out and the daimyo had ordered more arrests. Seeing as to harm or be the cause of harm by doing nothing to a royal was a law passed in the Hai no Kuni. Several alliances made due to Naruto, even those inadvertently, suddenly became strained after the details of the trials were released. First, the country of Nami had pulled out of the construction deal they had to repair the village from the Sand Sound invasion. The workers that had been hired from Konohagakure were immediately fired and sent back without guards. Missions sent Konoha's way were suddenly shifted to Suna. Tsunade had idly commented to a few outraged civilians. They named their bridge Naruto. You know, this should really be a surprise. Second, the daimyo of Spring, Snow had requested a picture of the boy for their memorial, before withdrawing from weapons negotiations. The council, Shimura Danzo especially, had been livid, thankfully, before anything stupid had happened. Tsunade managed to persuade the council to let it slide. Then came the most recent blow, the induction of the Godime Case Cage, Sabaku no Gara. Little red-headed bastard, Tsunade thought as her fist clenched and she reached into her secret drawer to pull out a bottle of sake. Gara, upon his induction at the young age of 13, immediately asked what funeral services had been undertaken. Upon being revealed to have not done anything, Gara exploded. He demanded that something be done, or head pull out from the ceasefire treaty negotiations that their countries were undergoing. It had been one of the most hectic moments of any meeting Tsunade had been a part of. Godem-sama. Tsunade looked up upon being called to see Shizune standing before her worriedly. We have a small problem." "What?" she growled out. Shizune entered the room, leaving the door open behind her, before crossing over to her teacher's side. The apprentice of the greatest medical nin quickly whispered in her teacher's ear before ducking away for cover. Tsunade blinked once, and then once more, before her nostrils flared and she screamed out in fury, "Jiraiya!" Elsewhere, a white-haired man looked up and back towards the faint cry coming from the village he had once been a loyal spy for. Jiraiya looked down at the scar on his left arm. Waking up to this message carved into his limb freaked him out, and being arrested shortly afterwards was expected. But there was no way his student had died under his own watch. I'll find you, Naruto, he thought determinedly before looking back at the village, and then I'll rot in a cell. Kami knows I deserve it. Back in Kanto, Naruto Uzumaki rubbed the underside of his nose while approaching Mount Moon. Kanto on his shoulder and Mina walking on his right. Ooh, someone's talking about you, the girl teased. Do you have a girlfriend I don't know about? Naruto rolled his eyes with a faint blush on his cheeks before he replied with, Shut up, Mina-chan. I didn't sneeze, I just had an itch. Besides, that's just an old wives' tale anyway, right, Kanto? V. Yipped out the Eevee in agreement. Mina smirked slyly before walking closer to the blonde. So, you're single then? She asked suggestively. The sudden question made Naruto's face light up and the blonde started to sputter out nonsense. Mina giggled as she walked ahead of her companion with a dismissive, just kidding, whiskers. Naruto watched in amusement as Mina attempted to sway Kanto to rest on her shoulders as the cold breezes within MT. Moon danced past them. Why she insisted on going through the cave when going over it would be more challenging and interesting, Naruto wasn't sure. Especially since she knew the cave tended to be colder than the outside, due to her having explored it once beforehand. Naruto's small brown fox Pokemon was growling warningly at the girl's outstretched hands, who upon getting that response, pouted and crossed her arms. Ah, Kanto's so mean, Mina whined as she rubbed her hands on her arms in an effort to heat herself up. Naruto rolled his eyes at their antics before sliding his jacket off and holding it out to Mina. The brunette blinked owlishly before blushing slightly as she took the offered article of clothing, sighing in relief. Mina smiled at her blonde companion before going wide-eyed at his toned arms. Whoa, what kind of training did he do with Yamamoon? Mina thought in wonder before smiling at her fellow trainer. Thanks, Naruto. Anytime, Mina-chan. Naruto replied with his fox-like grin before looking at Kanto with a twinkle in his eyes. Besides, Kanto's fur is really warm. The Eevee perked up at the compliment from his trainer and cheerfully cried, V. At their combined teasing, Mina huffed and pulled the jacket tighter around her. Fine. Be that way. Mean blonde trainer and his equally mean Eevee. Naruto felt sweat drop down the back of his head as the girl stormed ahead of him with her arms crossed over her chest and muttering about dumb blondes. Sighing, said blonde glanced at his starter Pokemon and muttered, Can't you at least try to get along with Mina-chan, Con? Eevee, V. Kanto stubbornly replied with a shake of his head. The small fox-like Pokemon was intent on holding that grudge over almost being choked to death for a while. The blonde sighed once more before hurrying to catch up with the girl he was traveling with. Both trainers and the Eevee failed to notice the many pairs of eyes watching their every move. So what's the next gym like, Mina-chan? Naruto asked curiously as he lifted his arms and intertwined his hands behind his head, thankfully not disrupting Kanto off his shoulders. The girl wearing his jacket looked in his direction before quickly looking away with a red face. Naruto was oblivious to the fact that putting his hands behind his head accented his torso's slim build and arms definition. Oh, Arceus. Mina thought with a red face. Is it that ninja training of his that makes him so? Why am I blushing? I just met, Whiskers. When we get to Cerulean I need to call home. Maybe mom can explain this to me. Hey, Mina-chan? You okay? Naruto suddenly asked, leaning in to look at her face intently. I can't say for this sure, but your face looks all red. Yeah, I am fine, Mina quickly replied, as she looked away. The next gym. Cerulean Gym. It's mostly a water-type gym. Naruto blinked before frowning. Geez, is specialization a common thing with Pokemon gyms? Mina looked at him with confusion in her eyes. What do you mean? Well, one of my old teachers told me that while specializing in something was good, over-specializing in one area can lead to weaknesses in your style, replied the blonde as he recalled what Jiraiya had been telling him a week before his arrival in Kanto. He was about to open his mouth once again when something jumped out in front of him and shined a bright light that blinded the blonde trainer. Gah! What the hell? V. Kanto barked out before jumping from his perch to growl at the new Pokemon. It was 2 feet tall, round and pink with brown triangular ears. There was a large circular tail sticking out of its backside and above that were 2 small wings. Kanto didn't know what it was, but he was extremely wary of it. Mina followed the Eevee's gaze and her eyes widened before she squealed. Oh my gosh, a Clefairy! The brunette cried out as she grabbed a Pokeball from her hip. I am gonna need your help, Jiggly. From her Pokeball came a rose-colored Pokemon about 3 feet tall, with long rabbit-like ears and a curled patch of fur between them. The Wigglytuff's white belly reached to her mouth, which opened with a yawn before the green-eyed Jiggly asked, Wig? Naruto, once he finished rubbing the spots from his eyes, looked at the Clefairy in confusion. A Clefairy? Reaching for his handy-dandy Pokédex, Naruto held the technological encyclopedia out to scan the Pokemon in question. Dexter hummed for a moment before it beeped. Clefairy. The fairy Pokemon. Clefairy are known for their cuteness and are in major demand for pets in big cities. However, this Pokemon is considered a rarity due to its mysterious background. The only known attack to be wary of is its metronome, which duplicates any known technique in the Pokemon world randomly. More studies on the small Pokemon are required. Huh, well that's not a lot to work with, Naruto mused before snapping the device shut and putting it back in his pocket. Crossing his arms, Naruto asked, "Hey, Mina-chan, how long is this gonna take? Want Kanto to help?" "We got this, Whiskers, Jiggly, use double slap." Mina instructed her Pokemon. The Wigglytuff nodded and rushed the smaller Pokemon before pulling its right paw back and smacking it across the face. The sound the connection made echoed through the cave and Mina's other two companions winced at the noise. "Oi! Don't make us deaf," Naruto cried out as he held his head, Kanto whining in agreement as he sat on his ears. Clefairy. Another smack echoed through the tunnel and Naruto sucked in some air before looking at the fight. His jaw slackened and he could only manage to think, no way. The Clefairy and Jiggly had entered the slap-off to end all slap-offs. "Hit it again. Come on, Jiggly. I know you can do it." Mina cheered her Pokemon on before making a fist. "Now hit her with Pound." Clefairy's eyes widened at the order and it tried to flee, but Jiggly was having none of it. Her left paw pulled back before flying forward and striking the fairy Pokemon in the cheek, sending it skidding back to the ground. Mina acted quickly and pulled a spare Pokeball out, throwing it at the downed Clefairy. "Fairy!" The tired Clefairy exclaimed as its fingers suddenly shined brightly. Naruto's eyes widened as the ground began to shake. "Earthquake, then this is," the blonde realized before he leapt at Mina when a bit of the ceiling fell towards her, tackling the girl to the side. Naruto brushed over his Pokeballs and called out his Machop. "Yama Moon, protect Jiggly and the Clefairy." Naruto cried out, "It's a cave-in." "Chop." Yama Moon confirmed with a nod before leaping at the two pink Pokemon, covering them with his body as the ceiling collapsed around them. Kanto quickly dashed to Naruto's side and was pulled underneath the blonde next to Mina. The falling rocks continued for a good 5 minutes before coming to a stop. Mina, who was knocked out from Naruto's impromptu rescue, slowly came to an hour later. Whiskers, what was that for?" Mina asked through a groan, blinking before her face flushed at their positioning. Naruto was bracing himself over her, his arms on either side of her head, putting her face to face with him, and his face was scrunched close in concentration, to her immediate right, in her arms in fact. Kanto laid with his ears back, whimpering in worry. She heard shuffling and a muffled chop before Naruto released a sigh of relief, opening his eyes. Naruto gave a slightly pained smile to Mina, whose face reddened further, before he tried to turn his head over his shoulder. Doing so made the rock above them shuffle and the blonde groaned. "Great, hey Yama. Can you get these rocks off me? I can practically feel my spine breaking." He called to his Pokemon, trying not to shout right in Mina's face. A muffled chop of confirmation was heard in Naruto's side in relief. "You okay, Mina-chan?" he asked quietly as his Machop slowly started to pull the rubble off them. The red-faced girl tried to get her blush under control and nodded, not completely trusting her voice at the moment. His rescue, while painful, had only added to his allure. During their week of training for the pewter gym match, Mina had noted several key things that made Naruto excellent boyfriend material. The first thing she noted in her mental boyfriend checklist were his facial features. Wild blonde hair and sapphire blue eyes that would make any girl swoon, mixed with those absolutely adorable whisker marks on his exotic tan cheeks, gave him an immediate 10 on her rating scale. Sure, his face was a little round, but that was mostly childish chub that would probably vanish in a few months to a year if he continued that ridiculous training of his. His build would probably become lean and toned, like a wild Persian rather than bulky like a machoke. Mina's face darkened at the thought of his build and her eyes quickly glanced down between their bodies to glance at his midsection. "Hey, Mina-chan, you alright?" Naruto's voice snapped her from imagining what lay behind his shirt. "You're turning all red. Yama, pick up the pace on digging us out." "Chop." A much clearer cry came back. Naruto sighed and Mina barely repressed a shiver at his breath tickling her face. Whined Kanto worriedly, glancing up at his trainer. Naruto smiled. "This is nothing, Kanto," Naruto said to his concerned Eevee. "I've done worse things than this, and you know how fast I heal." Conceded Kanto with a sigh. Mina glanced at the Pokemon before looking back at the blonde and resumed going over her checklist. Focusing on the internal qualities Naruto displayed next, he was brave, loyal, kind, caring, funny, and he never looked down on anyone like that jerk Gary, though he had his moments where he was stubborn, stupid, and just plain mean. That damn Pidgey of his didn't help matters. The blonde trainer was a pretty good catch for whoever would end up with him. Then there's the fact he's a pretty decent trainer, Mina mused as she looked at the Eevee lying between them. Kanto whimpered once more before Naruto released a sudden sigh of relief and pushed himself to his feet. Naruto looked back at Yamamoon with a grin before offering a hand to Mina as Kanto jumped off her. The girl's Wigglytuff immediately waddled to her side and hugged her leg tightly. Mina patted her Pokemon's head before recalling her and looking up at the blonde trainer. Thanks, Whiskers, Mina said shyly, earning a confused glance from her companion at her sudden flip in personality. Shrugging the reply off, Naruto then looked to his Machop with another grin. Way to go, Yama, the blonde said to his Pokemon, who beamed at the praise. Naruto lifted the Machop's Pokeball to recall him when the wild Clefairy jumped on Yama's back, hugging him tightly. Fairy! Sighed out the small pink Pokemon. Naruto blinked in confusion before resuming the recalling of Yamamoon, who took on a red hue before vanishing into the ball. The Clefairy immediately fell to its face, before jumping to its feet and angrily pointing at the blonde. Fairy Clefairy! Fairy Fairy! The Pokemon cried out with a glare locked on the blonde. Naruto blinked owlishly before looking at Yamamoon's Pokeball and back. The blonde then looked to an equally shocked Mina, who looked back before she grinned, furrowing his brow. Naruto asked, "What's so funny?" "That Clefairy has a crush on your Machop," Mina giggled out. Naruto's brow furrowed even more. "But they're not the same species," Naruto muttered in a bit of a lost tone, belaying his confusion. Mina rolled her eyes. "Oh come on. Pokemon aren't as fickle as humans. They find someone they like, get together, and make an egg, though some reproduce asexually. Most of the time some Pokemon go out of their way to find a mate." "So a Clefairy," Naruto started before looking at his Pokeball, and Yamamoon could make a Pokemon egg, yes, confirmed the brunette with a nod before frowning, although we don't have a lot of information on that. Pokemon that are in the mood tend to be rather secretive. Good, I don't think I could handle too much at once, Naruto thought before looking at the Clefairy and back to the girl next to him. You want to catch that Clefairy, still? Mina blinked before frowning. Yeah, but Naruto turned away and faced the Clefairy. Hey, you want to hug Yamamoon, right? The Clefairy, realizing that the human was addressing it, furrowed its brows. The blonde rolled his eyes before he elaborated, the Machop. Clefairy's eyes widened and a blush went across its cheeks before nodding vigorously. Clefairy, Cle. All right, let's make a deal then, Naruto said with a grin. You let my friend here capture you, and you can see Yamamoon whenever you want. Deal? The Clefairy blinked owlishly before beaming. It immediately ran to Mina and held its arms out, proclaiming, Fairy. Mina gaped at the way her friend had manipulated the Pokemon before scratching her head. I don't know. I don't feel right capturing you without a Pokemon battle. The Clefairy blinked before frowning and stomped her foot. Fairy. You should probably do it, Naruto said with a chuckle as Kanto jumped to his shoulder while he spun Yamamoon's Pokeball on his finger. That Clefairy seems rather insistent on being with Yama. Yeah, but it seems way too easy, the brunette replied with a frown. Naruto rolled his eyes while he holstered Yamamoon's Pokeball and snatched Mina's back. Hey, Mina cried out in shock. What are you? The sooner you catch the Clefairy, the sooner we get to Cerulean City. Naruto rationalized in his head before digging through the ball pouch on her pack. Geez, look at this mess. You should have told me that you had this many. I'd seal them away in a jiffy. Seals? Mina repeated with a furrowed brow. What good would a seal do? And where'd you catch one anyway? Naruto looked up from his search, blinking a few times out of confusion, before realization crossed his face. Chuckling as he resumed looking for a Pokeball that felt right, he said, No, not a Pokemon, a seal, as in one of my ninja things, is what my teacher had taught me. Fuinjutsu is a really handy thing once you learn it. It'll show you once we get to Cerulean. Aha! This should do it. The blonde pulled out a green ball with 4 red gems on the front and juggled it before tossing said ball at the Clefairy. The Pokemon was captured without so much as a rustle. The ball's release button solidifying on gray almost immediately after Clefairy's capture. Mina glared at Naruto, who arched a brow in questioning as he handed her pack back to her. What? He asked. Mina simply shook her head in disbelief before taking Clefairy's ball from him and releasing the Pokemon in question. The Clefairy blinked before locking an intense stare on the blonde trainer. Naruto's brow furrowed once more before he snapped his fingers in realization. Oh right, our deal. Naruto enlarged Yama's Pokeball once again before tossing it into the sky. The ball cracked and outshot the confused Machop. Looking around, Yamamoon blinked before his gaze landed on his owner. Fairy. The Clefairy cried out before latching onto Yama's torso, causing the Machop to give off a surprised chop. Mina giggled at the sight while Naruto and Kanto chuckled. Naruto smiled at his Machop as said Pokemon tried to pry the smaller one off of him. The blonde looked at Mina. So what are y'all gonna call her? Clefy, the brunette replied after a moment. Naruto blinked before shrugging as he looked at his Machop. Yamamoon glared daggers as his trainer as the newly named Clefy nuzzled his chest. Kanto put a paw over his mouth in an effort to keep from laughing. Yamamoon switched his gaze to the brown fox and grumbled, "Chop." "VV, VV." Kanto replied in a teasing manner before laughing at the fighting Pokemon's predicament. Naruto shook his head. "Stop teasing Yama, Kanto," he chastised the Eevee. "You never know when some nice Poke-lady may come along and latch herself onto you." "Pix," sneezed a small brown fox with 6 tails and a curl between her ears. Her dark-skinned trainer frowned and knelt next to her. He wore dark pants, sneakers, an orange shirt, and a green vest over it stuffed with various utensils for a breeder in the making. "Hey, you okay, Vulpix?" he asked before looking at his 2 companions. "Hey guys, let's take a break. I want to make sure nothing's wrong with Vulpix." "Ah, but Brock," whined the black-haired young man with a red and white hat. He wore a black t-shirt that was tucked into his jeans and a short-sleeved blue and white jacket protected him from the cold. He continued, "We're almost at Celadon City." "Come on, Ash, we've been walking for 8 hours. A red-headed girl with a pigtail pleaded. She wore a yellow belly shirt with jean shorts and red overalls. At her feet a yellow mouse with red circles on his cheeks collapsed. The girl gestured to the exhausted mouse. "Even Pikachu's tired." Ash sighed and scratched the back of his head. "Yeah, I guess you're right." Brock frowned and scratched the back of his Vulpix head. "Hopefully it's nothing. Maybe someone's talking about her. Vulpix are said to be supernaturally aware." "Why would someone be talking about Vulpix?" Ash asked his friend. The former gym leader shrugged. "Maybe Susie misses her," Brock suggested before grinning with blush as some blood dripped out of his nose. "Or she misses me, oof." "Freakin' perv," Misty grumbled as she flexed her hand after punching the older teen into the ground, while Vulpix prodded her trainer worriedly. Ash sighed as he let his green backpack fall to the ground. They wouldn't be going anywhere for a while, especially with the way his companion was currently eating the dirt. As Kanto dozed peacefully on his shoulders, Naruto suddenly stopped walking as a pleased tingle reverberated in the back of his head, but his sudden stop made Mina look back at him in concern. They were following Cleffy, who was clinging to Yamamoon, as she led them out of Mount Moon. The blonde grinned at his fellow trainer's concern. "Someone, somewhere, has just bashed a pervert into the ground. My inner anti-pervert is pleased." Mina blinked before rolling her eyes and resuming her pace. "Come on, Whiskers, Cleffy and Yamamoon are still going towards the exit." The blonde blinked before grinning as he rushed towards the exit. "All right, race ya, Mina-chan." The brunette gaped as her companion rushed past her before calling out, Hey, Whiskers. Damn it, stop doing that." "Stop calling me Whiskers and maybe I will. Besides, you said you could keep up," Naruto called back as he shot past Yamamoon and Cleffy. The 2 Pokemon blinked before the Machop grinned and slung the Clefairy onto his back. He braced himself before rushing after his trainer. Cleffy released a surprised yelp before squealing as she snuggled into her love's back. "You crazy blonde idiot, wait for me," Mina called out to the running blonde as she trailed behind Machop. Naruto laughed before skidding to a stop as the tunnel came to an abrupt end. A sign near the exit made Naruto's eyes widen in shock. "Oh," he muttered as he stared at the giant boulder blocking the exit. "That cave-in must have been larger than we originally thought." Pant, you dick," Mina said as she came to a halt next to a barely panting Yamamoon. Naruto frowned and put his hand against the large rock. "Yama, can you move it?" "Chop," replied the determined muscle Pokemon as he walked up to the rock. Putting his hands against it, Yamamoon grunted as he attempted to push the stone. Naruto, seeing his Pokemon struggle, joined him and started to push his weight against the boulder. "Grr, I might have to use the Rasengan to get through this," Naruto mused as he and Yamamoon backed away from the boulder. Naruto recalled his Machop as Mina called Cleffy back into her Pokeball. Naruto pulled Kanto's Pokeball off of his hip and enlarged it before recalling the snoozing Eevee. "Mina-chan, take a few steps back," he said to her, getting a nod from the girl as well as a confused, curious glance. Holding his hands up in his favorite hand seal, Naruto grinned. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," he exclaimed with a wide smile before a duplicate Naruto appeared next to the original. Mina gaped once more, still not used to how the blonde could summon duplicates of himself at will. All the while, a buried portion of Mina's subconscious curiously wondered how else the technique could be used. Nodding at his clone, Naruto held one hand out while the clone cupped it before moving his hands in a circular motion over it. Before Mina could ask what he was doing, a small blue light started to grow in Naruto's hand. It grew into a Pokeball-sized sphere, resting comfortably in the palm of the blonde's hand. Naruto dismissed his clone and absently recognized the sensation of learning the proper way to maintain the Rasengan's shape before rearing his hand back. "Rasengan!" Naruto exclaimed, causing his cry to echo throughout the cave, before he shoved his attack into the boulder, easily shattering the large rock. Mina's already wide eyes were now the size of dinner plates and her jaw was on the ground. Her mouth twitched occasionally, trying to get a sentence to form, but all she could manage were cute confused squeaks. Hearing his friend's sounds, Naruto grinned as the attack faded from his hand, offering his hand to her, and taking note of the absent-minded acceptance. Naruto led the odd girl out into the fresh air of the route to Cerulean City. They managed to get a few miles before Mina's mind caught up with her body. What was that? Mina demanded, pulling her hand from the blonde's and gesturing wildly. First you used double team, now a freaking shadow ball. What the heck, Whiskers? What are you? Naruto blinked at his shocked companion before grinning as he stuffed his hands into his pockets. I am a ninja, Mina-chan, we've been over this. Ninja don't use Pokemon attacks, Mina exclaimed while pointing at the blonde before leaning in to examine his eyes, having a very determined stare that was similar to Delia's when she wanted to know something and making the blonde sweat slightly. And I want to know what that shadow ball was. It was unlike anything I've ever seen before. Okay, first of all, I don't use Pokemon attacks, Mina-chan, the blonde shinobi corrected with a sigh. I use ninja techniques, we discussed this already. I call BS, the girl replied, pointing at him accusingly. Fuchsia ninja don't do those sort of things. Naruto blinked before shrugging his shoulders. I don't know how these fuchsia do it, but that's how I was taught. Fine, then explain the shadow ball, Mina said with a frown as she crossed her arms. No one's ever seen anything like that. The blonde grinned. Oh, the Resendon. Yeah, that's my signature technique, sure, my sensei's first student and my hero made it, but I learned how to do it in less than a month. Took him years to do so, still gotta work on mastering it, though. What is it? The girl asked as they resumed walking towards the next city. It was so pretty and powerful. It's called the Resendon, Naruto said once again, enthusiastic to explain the ninja technique. It's a form of chakra manipulation that shapes into a sphere of condensed chakra. That's that energy you told me about when you explained your double team technique, right? Mina asked with a curious glint in her eye. Naruto nodded. Yep. Anyway, the chakra is first manipulated to rotate in several directions, followed by pumping more power into the technique. The blonde said simply before frowning, but that's as far as I can get without a clone. Maybe once I get it down I can teach it to Yamamoon or Kanto. They're pretty good at manipulating their chakra. I thought Pokemon used aura, asked a confused Mina. Naruto nodded. Yeah, but according to Okiji, the two are very similar, Naruto said before he paled. Crap, I haven't called Mom in over a month, she's gonna kill me. We can call home when we get to Cerulean, Mina said with a mischievous grin. I want to call Daddy and tell him what a good new friend I have. Naruto frowned in concern when she said friend in a weird tone. He then looked at the girl and noted the mischievous smile on her face, immediately paling. That means nothing good for me. Why I don't know, but I get the feeling I will have death threats soon enough. Mina, meanwhile, was thinking, oh Daddy's going to rip a new one into you, Whiskers, and then you'll be sorry you keep leaving me in the dust. Might as well talk to Mom, too. She might be able to explain some things to me. It took them the rest of the day to get to Cerulean City. Along the way, they saw a few Geodudes, flocks of Pidgeys and Spearows, and the occasional Sandshrew popped up from the ground. Naruto had to physically restrain Mina from blomping the first Sandshrew she saw, mostly because he wanted to get to the next Pokemon Center as soon as possible. His logic was, the sooner I get there, the sooner I can call my mom, and then get the scolding out of the way. Mina then made a crack about Naruto being a mama's boy. He countered with calling her a slowpoke, which led to her calling him a freak, and thus starting a whole new argument consisting of name-calling. It escalated to a point where Naruto hinted at Mina being underdeveloped for her age. That's when he learned not to ever comment on a girl's breast size, especially one that's still growing. The beating that followed would make him realize that nothing, not even awesome ninja powers or loyal Pokemon, could escape the wrath of a woman. Hence why Kanto, Yamamoon, Verusa and Hyaden were all being healed at this moment. They each learned not to try to interfere with their master's beings from then on. Ow, the blonde trainer moaned as he held an ice pack to his head, courtesy of the Chansey within the Pokemon Center. They had arrived moments ago, Mina dragging her companion by his ankle while he tried to crawl away to safety. The girl in question was currently using the phones near the front desk while Naruto lounged in one of the bench rows, letting his inner demon heal him. Chansey. The helpful Pokemon chimed as it offered the blonde a warm cup of tea and an aspirin. Naruto smiled at the offer and gladly took the items, swallowing the pill and downing the tea with vigor. Thanks Chansey, he said to the round pink Pokemon as he handed the cup back. I think it'll be good for now. Chansey, the assistant nurse said with a nod of its upper body, roughly where its head could be, before waddling off to help Nurse Joy with some other duties. Naruto sighed and sank back into his chair with a sigh, reaching up to fiddle with his necklace. The blonde trainer smiled as he looked out the window, eyeing the sunny day in remembrance. Why can't the Konoha hospital be set up like this? I wouldn't have escaped as much if it were. He mused to himself before looking up when Mina called his name. The girl was waving him over with that mischievous glint in her eyes. Despite every fiber of his being telling him to stay put, Naruto stood up and walked over to the girl out of sheer curiosity. He would later look back and regret doing so. "Sup, Mina-chan?" Naruto asked before looking at the phone screen. He would never get over the technology this world had compared to his, hence why he had a moment of awe as he stared at a much older Mina, only with brown eyes instead of blue. And standing behind her was a red-faced, dark-haired man. "You!" the man suddenly shouted, pushing the older Mira out of the way as his angered visage covered the screen. "Who are you? What are you doing with my darling little princess? Are you trying to defile her? Stay away from my daughter, you little bastard!" "Daddy!" Mina shrieked with her hands over her embarrassed red face. Naruto just gaped at the blunt accusation as his own cheeks darkened. "Wa defile no," Naruto denied, waving his hands in a disagreement. "I am not trying to get with Mina-chan, you perverted freak." "Why? Is my little Mina not good enough? Punk! You trying to say something, boy? Are you calling her ugly?" "I'll kick you," the man accused once again before being punched by a red glove surrounded by fire. The older Mina stepped back into the frame with a shorter humanoid Pokemon that had square spikes atop its head and large shoulders. The Pokemon had tan skin and what appeared to be a purple shirt and skirt, separated by a black belt. In place of hands were red boxing gloves. "Sorry about that," older Mina said apologetically. "My name is Rachel Green. You just met my husband, Vincent. This is Jackie." "Hitmon." The Pokemon greeted with a nod. Naruto blinked before pulling Dexter out. "Hitmonchan." The punching Pokemon, Dexter chimed with a smaller Hitmonchan image on the screen of the Pokédex. Hitmonchan are one of the few humanoid Pokemon in the world. They are capable of 50 consecutive punches in under a second, and most of their techniques revolve around their fists. Hitmonchan are good additions for any trainer's party, but it is advised to not have both the Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee in the same group, especially in a tag match. The two Pokemon are ferocious rivals and have been known to spar for days at a time, dropping everything just to see which is better. "Hitmonchan, huh, oh, right, nice to meet you, Rachel-san." Naruto greeted with a smile and a nod of his head. "You as well. Jackie-san. My name is Naruto Uzumaki." "Hitmonchan." The Pokemon groaned suddenly before turning around and leaping off screen. Rachel smiled despite the yelp came from the direction Vincent was sent. "The pleasure is mine, Naruto. Mina, you never said he was so well-mannered and handsome too." The woman giggled, making her daughter's companion blush. "Sorry about Vincent. He's just really protective of Mina." "I couldn't tell," Naruto thought sarcastically while smiling nervously. "Yeah, well, I can understand that. Sort of. Oh, hey, do you know Delia Ketchum?" "Yes, I do. In fact, I just had lunch with her today. Why?" "I was just wondering if she's a little angry," Naruto muttered. Rachel hummed before nodding. "Yes, Delia has been a bit tense for the past few days, but she was really miffed today for some reason." "Ah, great. Mom's gonna kill me." The blonde trainer sighed out under his breath, before smiling at the confused woman. "It was nice meeting you. I have to make a phone call of my own. Bye, Rachel-san." "Goodbye, Naruto." The woman giggled at his enthusiastic farewell, looking at her daughter as Mina picked the phone up to have a private conversation. "I can see why you like him, Mina. He's cute." "Mama," Mina groaned with a blush. "I don't think." "Trust me, Mina." Rachel cut off her daughter with a knowing smirk. "Those butterflies you get in your tummy when he smiles at you. The way you smile when you look at him, it's just like how your father makes me feel." "But, I mean, I just met him," the brunette said softly with a confused frown. "How can I like him like that when I barely know him?" "That's not the question you need to focus on, Mina," her mother said with a smile. "The question you need to ask yourself is, how much do you like him?" While Mina was having her moment with her mother, Naruto was mentally preparing himself for the berating he was going to get from his adoptive mom. The blonde nervously swallowed before pressing the numbers on the keypad and hitting the call button. The phone rang twice before being picked up and the face of Delia Ketchum appeared on the screen. Her hair was down for the night and based on the fuzzy cloth covering her shoulders, she was in a robe. As soon as her brown eyes locked on his blue ones, they narrowed sharply. "It's about time, young man." Delia roared through the phone, causing Naruto to pull the receiver away from his ear with a wince and draw the sender's other occupant's attention. "What in the name of ARCERUS have you been doing? It's been 2 months and now you decide to call me? Do you know how worried I've been? I thought you were the more responsible one." Sorry, Mom," Naruto sheepishly replied. Delia kept a furious gaze on him before sighing and putting a hand on her head. No, it's okay. I am sorry," she replied with a smile. "Just don't do it again. I worry about you. It's just, Ash barely calls and I expected a response sooner from you. You're his older brother now. You should be more responsible than him." "Right, I'll try to remember that." Naruto nodded with his own soft smile as a warm feeling filled his chest. He grinned and held up his first badge. "Check it out. Badge 1, on my first try." Now I've only got 7 to go. Oh my. That's impressive, Delia said. Ash only has 3 at the moment. Last I heard he was on his way to Celadon. I think he got held up in a town outside of Saffron. Hey, good for me, I guess, the blonde trainer replied. It'll make it easier to catch up to him if he keeps getting sidetracked. Speaking of sidetracked, I would have called sooner, but there was a cave-in at Mount Moon, Mina-chan and I. Wait a second. Mina-chan? Who's Mina-chan? Naruto Uzumaki. You better not be doing inappropriate things with girls. Delia scolded with a frown. Naruto's face lit up like a furnace. Mom, it's not like that. Geez. We met in Pewter City and decided to travel together. Oh, well, I guess that's okay. Delia hummed before frowning. No hanky-panky, though. Yes ma'am. Naruto groaned as he hid his face behind one hand, thoroughly embarrassed if his red face was anything to go by. I should probably see if Kanto and the others are healed yet. I'll call you before I leave Cerulean City, okay? You'd better. The woman replied with a stern look on her face before she smiled softly. Good luck, Naruto. I believe in you. Be safe. Feeling his heart jump up into his throat and tears burning in his eyes, Naruto smiled back and nodded before he hung up with a soft goodbye. Once the phone was hung up, the blonde trainer wiped a stray tear away. Thanks, Mom. Naruto sighed and turned around to come face to face with the center's Chansey. The small nurse-like Pokemon beamed a smile his way, offering a cup of tea with a polite, Chansey. His somber mood forgotten, the blonde trainer smiled back and accepted the drink. Thank you, Chansey. Chansey. The Pokemon replied with a bow of its upper body before returning to its job. Naruto blew some steam away before taking a sip of his tea. The blonde trainer returned to the couches and sat down with a content sigh. His mind began to wander back to his village and he wondered how they were doing. Tsunade snarled as she squeezed the throat of another civilian that was stupid enough to get wasted while he was still be blinded by hatred for a certain brat. Ignoring the Anbu around her trying to calm her down, Tsunade hissed, care to repeat that? F fucking, D demon, L loving, bitch. The man gasped out. Tsunade's eyes saw red and she cocked her free fist back. Hokage-sama. The Anbu teen cried as they jumped on the woman, barely managing to restrain the fist. The commander, Neko, spoke through gritted teeth. Hokage-sama, you have to stop this. Tsunade continued to glare holes into the mon's head before she released him. The Anbu waited for him to be a decent distance away before releasing their leader. Only a moment later they realized how foolish that was. The buxom blonde vanished in the speed only a cage such as herself would have and she reappeared in front of the fleeing drunkard. The man ran into her and fell backwards, looking up to sneer only to pale as he recognized the woman he ran into. You've committed crimes against the state. Not only are you insulting the honor of a deceased royal, but you are insulting the mantle of Hokage. This can be defined as treason. Not only that, but your alcohol levels are obscenely high for a civilian like yourself. The Godem said loud enough for the surrounding people to hear. As your cage and enforcer of the daimyo's law, I sentence you to death. Wait. Mercy. Tsunade said nothing as she gathered chakra in her right foot and lifted it up. In a split second, the man was dead, his body mangled from the chakra-enhanced strength that belonged to Tsunade. Watching children cried in fear while some uneasy civilians released the contents of their stomachs. The Godem panted before turning around and walking back to her office. That was the first time she openly executed one of the villagers, and after that display, she was certain it would be the last. A new Anbu member, Tora, appeared at her side before he spoke to his leader. We've found a small trail, Hokage-sama, Tora said softly, getting the woman's attention as honey-brown eyes locked on his masked form. Seeing the silent continue, Tora resumed his debriefing. It seems that he's looking for Namikaze-sama. I would suggest that we send a Yamanaka with the retrieval squad. Jirai is not that crazy. Then again, losing a second apprentice who happens to be the son of the first would be a devastating blow to one's mind, rationalized Tsunade's medical mind. However, there's also the off chance that he has lost it. I've seen it happen to better men than him. Assemble a squad and meet me in my office, Tsunade ordered. Tora nodded and vanished in a poof of smoke. The Godem sighed as she approached her office building. In the words of Shikamaru, this is troublesome. Naruto was snapped from his musing as Mina sat down next to him. Smiling at his companion, the blonde asked, so, your mom is nice? She's fine, Mina replied as she accepted her own cup of tea. Thank you, Chansey. What about yours? Mrs. Ketchum didn't seem happy when you called her. That's my fault, the whiskered blonde admitted sheepishly. Mom's all right, just a bit worried. I was supposed to call her in Viridian or at least Pewter. Mina smirked. You're a bad kid, you know that? Yeah, well, I am not used to having a parent to call, Naruto stated with a shrug. I only recently joined the Ketchum family. How recent? Is that why you're so adamant about catching up to Ash? The brunette asked curiously. I was adopted 2 months ago, so yeah, Naruto replied nonchalantly while Mira spewed tea out of her mouth like a water gun. Teasingly, the blonde asked, are you a water Pokemon? That looked a lot like water gun. Mina glared at him before opening her mouth to ask him what he meant. Her question was cut off by the excited yipping of a certain reddish-brown Eevee and an amused giggle from Nurse Joy. Naruto barely managed to keep from tossing his teacup when Kanto leapt onto his lap and started licking him enthusiastically. Setting the drink down on the coffee table, the blonde hugged his Pokemon. Hey, Kanto, how are you feeling, buddy? Asked Naruto to his Pokemon. V. Kanto replied before settling down. Mina and Nurse Joy giggled at their interaction. Once the Eevee was calm, the two trainers looked up at the head of the Poke Center almost expectantly. Joy giggled at the accusing stare she was receiving from the blonde. My cousin warned me about you. She teased Naruto, said something about a suspicious blonde who called her a ninja. You're lucky that you're an eighth shorter than her or I'd really be suspicious, Naruto grumbled after a moment. Mina looked between the two in confusion before squinting her eyes at the Joy, trying to see the height difference her apparent crush saw. Seeing this, Naruto continued, don't bother, Mina-chan. You need awesome ninja skills to see it. Glaring at the blonde for the unintended insult, Mina quickly shot back, speaking of which, what was that weird shadow ball you use? The blue eyes of her companion rolled while he scratched Kanto behind one of his ears. I told you, it's called a Rasengan. Rasengan. Nurse Joy repeated with a confused tilt of her head. Naruto sighed as his own head hung while Mina laughed. Rasengan, Joy-san, he corrected her with a small smile. It's something I learned from my old teacher. Oh, well, I just wanted to inform you that your Pokemon are in tip-top shape and you can reclaim them whenever you want. I know that most are leaving their Pokemon at the daycare center up the road while they go to see the Gym Sisters' performances. Joy replied with a smile. The two trainers exchanged a confused glance. Gym Sisters' performances? Naruto repeated, his own features becoming equal to that of a confused fox. Mina bit down on her tongue to keep from making a sound while Chansey trilled her name in adoration. Nurse Joy giggled at his face. Yes, Joy replied with a smile. Daisy, Lily, and Violet are the Gym Sisters, with Daisy being the gym leader. They tend to not battle though and instead perform water ballet with their Pokemon. You mean like those contest things that are starting up in Hoenn? Mina asked with a raised brow while Naruto and Kanto sighed in dismay. The two females looked at the depressed duo. Man, Naruto whined, I wanted to battle, I am not going to dance for the badge. V pouted his Eevee in agreement. Mina rolled her eyes. Oh, grow up. If anything, we could go to the lighthouse nearby and talk to Bill if you don't want to battle. Lighthouse? Naruto asked with an arched brow while Kanto questioned with, V? The brunette sighed and palmed her head. I thought Professor Oak told you about Bill? He mentioned the name once, I think, Naruto murmured before shrugging. I don't know. I was more interested in the gyms and Pokemon. Sides, battles are fun. Right, Kanto? V confirmed the small Pokemon with a nod of his own head. Well, I suppose you could always wait until the original gym leader comes back, Joy commented from where she stood. The two trainers snapped their heads in her direction. Seeing the attention on her, Joy tittered out. Daisy's filling in until her sister, Misty, comes back from her journey. Misty, Naruto repeated while tapping his chin. Where have I heard that name before? After a moment of thinking, he shrugged, must not be important. Mina stared at him for a second before looking at Joy. Can we have our Pokemon back now? I have the strange urge to have my Jiggly slap him. Oi! The next morning, after a comfortable rest in one of the spare rooms at the Pokemon Center, Naruto and Mina set out for Bill's lighthouse. The two trainers briefly glanced at the gym as they walked by, one sighing in dismay while the other shook her head in disbelief. All the while they were unaware of the three sets of eyes following them. As they approached what was called Nugget Bridge, Naruto suddenly stopped and looked back towards the town, eyeing the small amount of trees with narrowed eyes. Kanto followed his gaze while Mina tried to find what her companion was glaring at. Must have been a wild Pokemon, Naruto muttered as he continued his stroll, looking at Mina. The blonde sheepishly said, sorry, thought I heard something. Idiot, Mina joked as they resumed walking. They walked in silence for a few minutes before Naruto stopped again. He glared at the opposite side of the bridge, seemingly at nothing, before looking to the confused and slightly irritated brunette. Something's not right here, let's go back, Naruto muttered. The disbelieving girl shook her head. You're so paranoid, Mr. Ninja, Mina teased as she walked past the blonde towards the middle of the bridge, turning around to look at the unmoving blonde and his Eevee. The girl rolled her eyes. Come on, Whiskers, Bill's place is just up ahead. The second she said that, The portion of the bridge behind her exploded upwards as a mechanical monstrosity shot up. Naruto leapt forward and picked Mina up in a bridal style before leaping back, Kanto jumping from his shoulder to glare at the machine. A gloved robotic hand immediately shot out and grabbed the Eevee. Naruto cried his Pokemon's name out in worry. A microphone squealed before the sound of tapping was heard. "This thing on?" "Hello? Hello?" A familiar male voice asked. He was cut off with a pained groan and a female spoke up. "Shut up, idiot." Naruto groaned, making Mina realize just how he was holding her and blush, before he said, "Great, not these bozos again." "What bozos?" Mina asked through her blush, and quickly followed with an embarrassed, "Put me down." The woman spoke again, "Prepare for trouble, and make it double." Her partner finished. After putting Mina down, Naruto palmed himself in the face. "To infect the world with devastation," the woman said. "To blight all people in every nation." The partner finished. A portion of the machine hissed as it slid open and two shadowed figures slowly rose on a platform, one a man and the other a woman. The woman continued as the smoke started to part, to denounce the goodness of truth and love. The man rhymed, "To extend our wrath to the stars above." "Cassidy." The woman introduced herself with a wink in Naruto's direction. The blonde in question groaned while Kanto struggled in the machine's grasp. "And Butch," the man said, pointing to himself with his thumb. "We're Team Rocket, circling Earth all day and night," Cassidy explained. "Surrender now or else you'll surely lose the fight." Butch finished. The fanfare playing in the background came to an end when a Pokemon shot out from Cassidy's hip. Ratatata. A small purple rad chirped before nuzzling into Cassidy's leg. Mina cooed at the sight before she responded to their self-proclaimed title. "Wait, that's Team Rocket?" she asked worriedly. Naruto scoffed while Cassidy glared at the brunette. "Yeah, but I kicked their ass easy," he said before reaching for his Pokeballs, "and I am sure Hyuden wouldn't mind a second fight with them." Recalling his tale concerning the Venonat's fight against the Rocket duo, Mina giggled and pulled her own Pokemon out. "Guess I'll follow your lead." "If you insist," Naruto drawled playfully before unhooking Hyuden's Pokeball from his waist and tossed it into the sky. "Kick their asses, Hyuden." "Help him out, Jiggly," Mina called as she released her Wigglytuff. The two Pokemon emerged from their confines in bright lights before Hyuden gave an annoyed buzz. Naruto sighed in agreement. "Yeah, it's Cassidy and Blake again." "The name's Butch, ya little twerp." Butch snapped from his place atop the machine. The traveling trainers ignored his outburst. "Give Kanto back," Naruto snarled, readying his hands to fall into his favorite ninjutsu hand sign. Cassidy grinned. "You know our response. Join Team Rocket." "Never." The younger blonde snapped immediately. "Hyuden, use Psybeam." The Rockets smirked as Hyuden's rainbow-colored beam shot at their machine from his eyes. The twin beams ricocheted off the broad chest back towards the trainers, making Naruto and Mina dive forward to avoid being hit. Hyuden released an irritated buzz and charged forward. "Hyuden, wait!" The blonde teen cried out in concern for his headstrong Pokemon. The bud paid no heed as it bounded forward, small golden specks falling from the purple fuzz. The machine's other hand shot out and wrapped around the Venonat tightly. "V Venonat," Hyuden managed to chirp out in confusion, as his stun spore had no effect. Naruto lifted his Pokemon's Pokeballs up in an effort to recall them. The cartoonish gloves blocked the red beams coming from the device's release buttons and stopped the trainer's attempt. "It's no use, Squirt," Butch taunted. These nanofiber gloves were designed by the boss to keep trainers from reclaiming their Pokemon. "Damn it," Naruto swore, looking at Mina. "Any ideas?" The brunette grinned as she swung her pack around in front of her, digging through it with a free hand. With a cry of achievement, she pulled out 2 sets of headphones, tossing one to the blonde in question. Confusion etched on his face. Naruto pulled the accessories on as Mina did, grinning at the Rockets. Mina called out, "Jiggly, sing." The girl quickly fell to her knees and covered her head, despite the headphones. Naruto quickly followed her example as he recognized the attack she instructed the pink Pokemon to use. Meanwhile, an ecstatic Wigglytuff cleared her throat. "Wig, A, Lee, tough, Wig, A, Lee." The harmonic voice of Jiggly soon filled the sky. Nearby, fish-like Pokemon started to surface while unconscious. The two Rockets felt their eyes sag and slowly fell to their butts while still atop their machine. "Wig, A, Lee, tough, Wig, A, Lee, E, tough." Jiggly's voice hit Kanto's ears and Hyuden's antenna. Both Pokemon sighed in content as they dozed off while trapped. The lullaby soon came to an end with a bang, literally, as the Rocket's machine fell forward due to the dastardly duo controlling it falling asleep. Mina and Naruto slowly stood up, the blonde amazed by the power of Mina's Pokemon's voice. The Rocket machine's hands unfurled and revealed the sleeping forms of Kanto and Hyuden. Pleased with herself, Jiggly toddled over to her trainer with a smile. Mina patted Jiggly's puff of hair with a smile and complimented, "Great job, Jiggly." "Wig." The pink Pokemon said, looking to Naruto for praise as well. The whiskered blonde grinned and gave her a thumbs up. "Thanks, Jiggly," he said. "I owe ya one, Wig." The Pokemon cried happily before being returned. The two trainers exchanged a smile as they went to recover Naruto's own dozing Pokemon, recalling Hyodin. Naruto went to scoop up Kanto, only pausing afterwards as a devious plan only a prankster such as himself could think up pushed itself to the front of his mind. "I think the Rockets deserve a reward for being so cooperative, don't you, Mina-chan?" he asked with a foxy grin. Blushing slightly, Mina pushed her feelings for the blonde aside as she gave him a questioning glance. "What do you have in mind?" "Hold this," Naruto said as he handed Kanto over to the girl, who happily cuddled him. Chuckling at his sleeping Eevee's predicament, the blonde reached behind him into his shinobi pouch, pulling out a few paper tags with what appeared to be scribbles on them. "I made these last night while you were asleep," Naruto said to the brunette. "I am going to give the Rockets a send-off they'll likely never forget." Naruto placed the tags in various places before jumping back to the end of the bridge. Mina quickly followed as the blonde smirked. Snapping his fingers, Naruto whispered, "Boom, the end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video."